All right, let's go over some of these Idaho State Police documents, this huge PDF, thankfully, that I got last night or in the middle of the night. I don't know what time it was. I got to give a big shout out to Gray Hughes Investigates. Gray Hughes Investigates is the one who sent me this huge document I was trying to get so much. Yeah, it was pretty late. It was close to midnight, August 15th. Today is August 16th. So Gray Hughes Investigates, I'll put a link to his channel below. I believe he's going through some of the documents, of course. I have to also give a big shout out always to the docket. I like to tell you guys straight up front, all the people who helped me. So the docket was texting me to make sure I got it, and thankfully I did. There's a lot of information in these 556 pages, so I'm reading a lot of it. Check the link below because I put it on Patreon. I know a Patreon member had been asking for it. As soon as people saw Brian Inton, another great, awesome reporter, got these Idaho State Police documents, people wanted them. I know I've put in a plethora, a lot of us have, put in so many different public records requests. And I don't know the rhyme or reason of how they're being released. It's generally first come, first serve, or, whoever's writing the correct public records request. But anyway, my goal today is to eventually get through the entire 556 pages. At first I read through the first 20, and now I'm up to the first 36 pages because I'm really taking my time. That's what you'll hear next. You're gonna hear me reading these interviews. So the first one is obviously, even though there's a lot of redactions, the first one is obviously Hoodie Guy, the stuff he has to say. There's a 27-year-old male who barely knew Maddie Mogan from marketing class. We are going to read an interview with then 19-year-old Dylan Mortensen. So her interviews are getting a lot of attention. I like to go through things in order, so I'm just reading through it chronologically. Even though I kind of dipped around and saw some interesting things, I'm reading interesting things online, and I'm like, oh my goodness, just wait till I get to that part. But I kind of want to go through all of it because everyone has something unique to say. Even if they didn't really know the victims that well, everyone is mentioning little tidbits that fascinate me. More than one person I've read so far, and I'm only 36 pages in pretty much, maybe a little more, 40. More than one person has mentioned how creepy and what a weird feeling the 1122 King Road house gave off. I don't know. So there's another 21-year-old female neighbor. Some of these neighbors who could look down, they could see the sliding glass door of the house. There's an interview with a 22-year-old who knew Kaylee since her freshman year. So many different ones. There's this one talks about the house having a weird feeling, talking about Kaylee and Jack's relationship. Kaylee and Jack, who broke up on again, off again, knew each other since kids. Someone kind of called it like a brother and sister relationship. Some of these interviews will sound familiar if you've watched a lot of the Idaho 4 documentaries, read the book. So you kind of see, even through the redactions, you can see some commonalities. You can see some things we've heard before and some stuff we've never heard before. One 21-year-old woman gets into, she's talking about her feelings about the rideshare driver. Some people talk about Hoodie Guy, like, we know he was cleared, but back then, I think everyone was kind of, giving a side eye to everyone else. What their true feelings were about, oh, I think this guy was kind of weird because of this, or I think that guy was kind of weird because of that. So I'm finding it very, very fascinating just in this little portion so far, which took me like 3 hours to read just 36 pages and of course give my commentary. We learned so much stuff. Like one of these women, she had just booked flights, a trip to Europe. She was supposed to take, I guess, with Kaylee. Stuff I didn't really know. And Kaylee had already started her job. Even this woman, whoever she is, everyone's, totally redacted. But she had her own misgivings, or I'd rather say after the sad deaths, she had her own questions about claiming, oh, I did wonder to myself why Kaylee was making all this money or how she was spending all this money. You know, we booked this European trip. Kaylee was, buying drinks for her friends. She bought this Range Rover. I didn't know how she could afford it. There's a lot of stuff I think that people maybe they didn't want to admit to each other, or maybe just to police. In this upcoming interview, we will go over at least Dylan's, I think it's her first interview with Idaho State Police, not her first interview with police. But people are already talking about, oh, Dylan's interviews conflict so much, but I'm going over it with a fine-tooth comb, and some stuff I'm really finding understandable as to why Dylan would have been so confused, especially when you see how much they drank, all this stuff. No victim shaming, just trying to understand. That's one reason I kind of want to go over reading this entire document. So stay tuned. Obviously, this is something I would have to do piecemeal as we would work our way through so many documents to see what's contained and where. At this point, I don't really want to just pick out just the interesting parts and just give you those parts. I kind of want to read through and see everything we can learn. Even those tiny little nuggets, like Kaylee had planned to go to Europe with this friend, and she had planned to start her new job, of course, in February of 2023. All these different things, I find them fascinating. I hope you do too. If you want to download the document, I uploaded it to my Patreon. I'll put that link below. I'm glad the document finally came out. I'm glad we're learning a lot more. And it shows me through all these interviews, obviously, investigators did a bang-up job. They interviewed so many people. And of course, the major players were probably interviewed more than once. We learn a lot about these people being interviewed and audio recorded, and some of them, it seems like visually recorded. It kind of gives me another blueprint on how to exactly request which specific interviews we want to see. If, for example, if Dylan or whomever was interviewed visually and if they will release it, it's kind of like, well, if we can get it, let's get it. We'll see. But for now, listen to me blather on. If you're the type who's very interested in details and you feel like these victims went through so much horror, their lives should have gone on to be such successes. And so I find it interesting to learn even deeper what kind of people they were, to understand them, to even understand the surviving roommates more, to understand how everyone in Moscow reacted, how their friends reacted. A lot of these interviews, you'll notice, took place in other cities. Like, investigators had to travel because very quickly after the crime, some people were out of town that Sunday, some people were out of town that Monday. I don't blame them. Brian Kohberger struck such fear into the hearts of that community, and investigators still did an amazing job to eventually track him down. I'm glad he's in prison now. But whoa, while he was still out and people were wondering who did this, there was kind of finger pointing, even though people didn't really necessarily want to do it. I'm going to let you listen to me read so much more, and we'll see how much, along with other cases I want to cover, of course, and continue covering, I can read to you in different segments so we can get through this entire 556-page document, which is tons of information. Kudos to them to be able to do it all. I'll just read 2 Kings 6:17. And Elisha prayed, "Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see. Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha." So listen up to me reading, and stay tuned for me, as my plan is to just go sequentially, knock it out, hopefully until we can get through all 556 pages. I know some of you don't like reading. You just want to listen to me as you're driving or you're going to sleep or whatever. And you can learn what's in these documents and we can talk about it through each of these videos. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Okay, let's dig into these documents. This is the initial call out from the Idaho State Police. The report is dated November 13th, 2022, the same day as the horrific crime. The location, of course, is 1122 King Road. The date and time are listed here. November 13th, 2022, the time is 12:22 p.m. So we know the police were called around 11:58. This is from Detective Jeffrey Talbot, assigned as lead. He says on November 13th, 2022, the Moscow Police Department, MPD, requested the Idaho State Police, ISP, District 2, investigations to assist with a multiple-person homicide located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, Latah County, Idaho. He writes, ISP Detective Jeffrey R. Talbot, was assigned as lead. Reports to follow. I tried to make this all dark mode, but it wouldn't work. I love dark mode. Now we have this supplement number 1, James Miller, Idaho State Police, Agency Assist Other. This report is dated November 17th, 2022. Now it says from date, that's interesting, March 16th, 2022. Let's see what it covers. On November 16th, 2022, Idaho State Police detectives interviewed blank, a lot of redactions, regarding multiple homicides which took place in Moscow, Idaho. The interview took place at blank in Boise, Ada County, Idaho. So again, they list the victims, and this is the witness. He's a white male, born in 2000, so at that point, he was 22 years old at that point. So this witness, he's 25 years old now. And there's another witness, another white male, 23 years old, born in 1999. Property, now they get DNA from a lot of people. Flash drives. Let's see what happens here. It's a challenge figuring out some of these people, but we can sometimes from contextual clues. I think this is Hoodie Guy. I read through at least 20 pages last night. It says on November 16th, 2022 at approximately 3:16 p.m., Idaho State Police Investigations Lieutenant Catlin and I interviewed blank. I think this is Hoodie Guy. The interview took place at his parents' house located in Boise, Ada County. During the interview, he stated the following. His residence at school was wherever, Moscow, Idaho. His residence is approximately, it's only 200 to 300 feet from the location of the homicide. It had been a little nerve-wracking going outside of his apartment. Indeed, I think they're going to mention down later that he was caught on camera at the grub truck, and so that's how I believe it's Hoodie Guy. He knew some of the homicide victims. He knew Maddie, Madison Mogan, and Xana Kernodle. He had met Kaylee Gonzalez the night before the homicide, but did not realize she was one of the victims until later. He did not know the male victim, Ethan Chapin. So at this point, all this fuss over Hoodie Guy, and he didn't even really know Kaylee. At this point in the interview, Blank's mother arrived home and was present for the remainder of the interview. He had known Maddie since their freshman year. They were in the same pledge class for the fraternities and sororities on campus. Maddie had dated some of his friends and had positive interactions with blank his girlfriend in the past. We're going to assume that just means Hoodie Guy's girlfriend. Hoodie Guy had done classes with Maddie, and they had done homework together periodically. He and Maddie had a lot of friends in common as well. He supposed he had met Kaylee prior to that night, but did not recall specifically. We're going to see in a lot of these documents how much alcohol contributed to a lot of people not remembering, and of course, circumstances, time. He had never met Xana's boyfriend, Ethan, before. He heard Ethan belonged to a certain fraternity. Ethan was also a year younger than Hoodie Guy in school. Maddie was dating one of his fraternity brothers, whom he believed lived in Boise. He had spoken to someone, maybe that's Maddie's boyfriend, earlier in the day on November 16th. Maybe they're saying here Maddie's boyfriend is a stand-up guy. Maddie's previous boyfriend was also one of someone's friends and is also a nice guy. He and Mogan were mostly just on and off friends. Saturday night, November 12th, and into Sunday morning, November 13th, at the end of the game day, people went out to bars. He ran into Maddie at the corner club. Maddie and Kaylee were going to leave the bar to go to John's Alley and asked Hoodie Guy if he wanted to go with them. On the way to John's Alley, Maddie and Kaylee decided to get food at the grub truck instead. So this would make sense. If it's indeed Hoodie Guy, that's why he would have been, caught on camera walking past after Maddie and Kaylee left the corner club, and they're like, "What did you tell Adam?" "I told him everything," that video, and Hoodie Guy's walking with them. That's probably why he was with them, because Maddie and Kaylee planned to go somewhere else, to John's Alley, but then they were like, wait, let's get food at the grub truck instead. So this is why I think it's Hoodie Guy. Hoodie Guy was at the grub truck with them, but was hanging out in the back because he was not getting any food. So that's why we saw Hoodie Guy, hanging out in the back. People thought initially he was suspicious because he's just hanging back. Someone in a silver sedan picked up Maddie and Kaylee. He assumed it was one of their friends. So we learn more about this person who's like a sober driver. Probably in these documents, we've learned more about him in other documents. Hoodie Guy told Maddie to have a good night. Blank's designated driver shift had already ended at approximately 2 a.m. Blank had a good coat on, so he walked home. So I'm assuming they mean his hoodie, and maybe that's why Hoodie Guy kind of raised his arm like, wait, where are the girls going? He was probably thinking our plans were to go to this John's Alley, but these girls just kind of left me, But he told Maddie to have a good night. Some designated driver's shift had already ended at approximately 2 a.m. and Hoodie Guy had a good coat on, so he walked home. He thought it took him 20 to 30 minutes to walk home from the grub truck. So it's too bad he couldn't have, gotten in the car with the girls if he lived so close to them. Somewhere in here, some guy doesn't really know where Maddie lived. It might be the same guy. So he might not have realized, hey, I can go with you guys. I live only 200 to 300 feet away. Anyway, he had a good coat on. He walked home. He got home around 3 a.m. and went to bed. Blank showed on a map, so he's showing the police the way he walked home, and the way he described did not pass the residents of the homicide scene. Cops are doing their due diligence. He's showing them, okay, this is the way I walked home, so he didn't pass the 1122 King Road house, the residence of the homicide scene. Chances are, of course, he wasn't guilty of being any kind of perpetrator, and he was not a witness to anything. He didn't walk past it. He probably didn't see Brian Koberger driving around. But this guy got home at 3 a.m. and went to bed anyway. Sunday, November 13th. Hoodie Guy woke up around 10 a.m. to watch NFL football. He left his house and went to Floyd's, a dispensary across the border in Washington. He couldn't remember if he went to Floyd's before he started watching football or if he started watching football, then went to Floyd's. He thought it was weird because he drove past the scene on his way to Floyd's and didn't see any police or anything out of the ordinary, and they're describing what kind of car he drove. So that makes sense. He woke up at 10 a.m. He saw nothing out of the ordinary. The police had not been called yet. During the morning, people called him to see if he knew what was going on down the street at the homicide scene. Hoodie Guy did not believe them and walked outside to see. Of course he wouldn't believe it because he's back home, I guess, watching football. He's been to a dispensary. He's already driven past that, murder house, but he didn't see anything out of the ordinary. And all of a sudden people are like contacting him to say, what's going on there? So Hoodie Guy had to walk down the street to see the resident's homicide scene. There was a rumor of an unconscious person, which seemed believable. During the group chat between the pledge classes from the fraternities and sororities, kids realized people were missing. So people were on Snap and they knew something was wrong, and something more than a person passed out might have happened. Most of his chats are via Snapchat. Some of the family members of the victims started letting people know about the homicide before the news did. Makes sense, because once people started finding out, and we don't know what time it was when they started finding out, but of course the students that were gathered in front of the house, they started discovering, oh, something's wrong in there, before the news would be able to report it. 13. Hoodie Guy heard a lot of people were packing up and leaving. So we don't know when this was. Was this as early as Sunday afternoon? Maybe. Hoodie Guy felt jumpy, even leaving his apartment and walking out to his car. He would be able to do his classes online, so he packed up the next morning, Monday, November 14th, and left, which was probably the best move he could have made, because we know as soon as that grub truck video came out, Hoodie Guy like had a target on his back almost from everyone like pointing at him. He had only been to the residence where the homicide took place maybe once. When he did go there, he was pretty sure it was all different people living there. He heard there was a party there earlier that day that some of his friends went to. When they say earlier that day, I'm assuming they meant Saturday. We know there was a party Friday as well at the 1122 King Road house. Anyway, Hoodie Guy went to the corner club by himself because he had friends who went there and worked there. Blank, I'm assuming that's Hoodie Guy, Maddie and Kaylee were the only ones in their group who left the corner club and went to the grub truck. Of the victims, only Maddie and Kaylee were out at the bar. Hoodie Guy believed Xana and Ethan were still underage. Hoodie Guy thought the car in front of their house looked similar to the one who picked them up that night. It seemed like a friend that picked them up, not a random person. People usually use designated drivers from their frats and sororities. He thought maybe Xana and Ethan might have picked up Maddie and Kaylee. Hoodie Guy doesn't usually go to parties. He usually goes to the bar. He heard a rumor there was a party at the victim's residence earlier. Xana sometimes would get a little crazy with partying, and I think we can infer what that blank is. But Maddie just uses alcohol. Kaylee, he thought, just drank alcohol only. He doesn't remember meeting Kaylee prior to that night. After the incident, he heard rumors of Kaylee having a stalker. Any girl who belonged to the sorority should know about the stalker information. Maddie and Kaylee, he believed, both belonged to whatever sorority. So Hoodie Guy had an ex-girlfriend he was trying to get back together with. For most of the past few years, he had a girlfriend who went to a different school, so he hadn't been hanging out with a lot of people regularly. Hoodie Guy had no idea who could have committed these homicides. Usually the craziest thing that happens are people getting MIPs and DUIs. He hadn't heard about any rumors about why this could have happened. He thought the only reason someone might have acted out like this is for love. I thought that was a very fascinating, interesting insight. You know how I think it was the mayor or someone said, oh, it was probably a crime of passion. I think a lot of people might have assumed that's what it was. When we heard about 4 people, being killed with a sharp-edged weapon, it sounded like a crazy crime where did some boyfriend find out something and find his girlfriend cheating, or, it sounded like that kind of situation. I think that's why Hoodie Guy would have said, maybe someone did this out of love, which he, of course, wouldn't be love, but out of some crazy relationship issues, I believe he's talking about. However, Hoodie Guy would never assume it would be some random stranger stalker, PhD candidate from WSU, Wazoo, staring, watching these girls and finally deciding to strike. So of course it sounds irrational. Of course his mind would, make him think it was something else. 22, he heard there are videos of him at the grub truck with Maddie and Kaylee. So that's how I knew, okay, this is Hoodie Guy. The grub truck live streams videos on Twitch TV. News outlets have identified him from that video and have called him. So already he was, getting calls. People knew who he was. Hoodie Guy left Moscow Monday morning around noon. He traveled home by way of Ontario, Oregon instead of New Meadows because he doesn't like driving through the mountains. With consent, I collected buccal swabs from Hoodie Guy. He had no apparent injuries to his hands, forearms, head, or neck areas. The interview ended at approximately 4:02 p.m. For complete details, review audio recording of interview. So we've got to get these interviews. The buccal swabs and the audio recording of the interview were submitted into evidence under this tag number as items 1 and 2 respectively. So did they have more than one interview with him? So that's page 4 of 4. I don't know if we have any more interviews with Hoodie Guy. But now we get to move on to the next interview. Okay, now this 3-page report, it's an interview with a man. I don't know if I ever figured out who it was. I don't think it was any of the girls' boyfriends or ex-boyfriends. You'll see what I mean. On November 17, 2022, Idaho State Police Detective Lieutenant Catlin and Detective Sergeant Hoxie conducted an interview with blank. The interview was in reference to the murder of Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, which occurred at 1122 King Road, Moscow on November 13th. So the interview took place in front of his residence located in Boise. So initially I thought it would have been one of the girl's boyfriends, perhaps Maddie's boyfriend, but as I read on, I saw how this guy didn't really know Maddie that well. Cops did their jobs. They got his DNA, they swabbed him. So on November 17th, 2022 at approximately 1:02 p.m., ISP Detective Lieutenant Catlin and I conducted an interview with this guy. The interview was in reference to the murder of Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, which occurred again at 1122 King Road, Moscow on November 13th. Took place in front of his residence. I guess they were outside. Located in Boise. I hope the interview sound quality with this guy will be good, because if they're outside, sometimes you can have all sorts of crazy noises. But he reported the following during the interview. On November 12th, so that would have been Saturday, he woke up stating he watched college football, then he went to the gym. His roommate, someone, had a dart tournament at Moose Lodge, which is next door to the Corner Club. At approximately 5 or 6 p.m., he went to the Moose Lodge and started drinking. Moose Lodge had a veterans special. They were at Moose Lodge until approximately 9 p.m., and then they went to Mingle's Bar and Grill for about an hour. After Mingle's, they went to the Corner Club, but at this point in the evening, he was intoxicated. He did not remember getting kicked out of the Corner Club and did not know why he was kicked out. So I heard a guy was kicked out of the Corner Club. In other interviews, they talked about him potentially being inappropriate, maybe with Maddie. I don't know if that's the same guy, because listen to this. At approximately 11:21 p.m., he and Maddie took a picture together while they were at the Corner Club. Maddie sent it in a group text to someone. Also sent with the photo was a text message saying, "Get to the club, blank." He didn't remember taking the photo with Maddie and didn't remember who Maddie was with. This was also the first time he'd seen Maddie outside of class and school projects. So he didn't know her much, He didn't remember much from the evening, but he said he walked home from the Corner Club. His address was blank in Moscow. His roommate got home around 1:30 a.m. to 1:40 a.m. His other roommate, blank, told him he got home about 30 minutes before blank, approximately 1 a.m. And that was the end of the night for him. His roommates are blank and blank. Blank were a couple. On November 13th, so this is Sunday, 2022, he woke up at approximately noon. So he learned of the incident through a vandal alert student email that afternoon, which explained the situation. An hour after receiving the first vandal alert, he received another which told him there was no suspect and to remain vigilant. A third vandal alert was sent out that evening while he was at work, which had details of how many victims there were. He didn't know Mogan was one of the victims until Monday afternoon when he received an email from his professor of marketing. He, Maddie, and blank are in marketing at the university and worked together on group projects. They were working on a project for blank, which was a cafe in town, so it must be the Mad Greek, I'm assuming, which was a cafe in town Maddie worked for. Although Maddie might have had more than one job, I'm thinking, so I shouldn't assume the Mad Greek, because I know the Mad Greek is more than a cafe, so I was wondering that point. Anything I get wrong or don't understand, feel free to leave comments below to let me know, set me straight. When they worked together on projects, they would meet and work in the basement of the Albertsons building on campus. He hadn't ever been to Maddie's house and didn't know until recently where she lived. So this is the guy. I was mixing him up with Hoodie Guy. He didn't even know where Maddie lived. So Hoodie Guy very well may have known that Maddie lived very close to him. But this guy, he worked at blank in Moscow. He's worked for blank for 8 years in total. As he transferred colleges, he moved stores with blank. His boss said the store carried old K-bar knives, but they were an older clearance item. He didn't know what kind of sheath a K-bar knife would come with. He didn't know Kaylee and didn't remember seeing her at the Corner Club. He didn't know any of the victims besides Maddie. Maddie was the only person from the house he spoke with, and it was mainly related to class projects. He'd only talked to Maddie approximately 4 or 5 times throughout the school year. They mainly used text messaging to communicate. He read us the group text that he, Maddie, and blank used. The last text from Maddie was a photo and a text message at the Corner Club. I was thinking to myself, imagine all these people just having these last memories. These last times they were with Maddie or Kaylee or whomever, and just hours later they were gone. Blank responded the following day, which was the last text in the thread. So by him responding, I don't know what time he responded, that kind of shows you he probably was none the wiser about what it transpired at around 4 a.m. Sunday morning. Anyway, he was attending his last semester at the university, and he thought Maddie was going to finish in 2023. He started college at Treasury Valley Community College, transferred to Utah Tech University, and from 2017 to 2019, he started attending the University of Idaho. In 2019, he joined the Army Reserve as a culinary specialist. Oh, that's nice. After 2 years, he went back to the University of Idaho to finish his schooling. So this guy's probably older. Did we get his age? I'm just curious. I'm just very curious. Oh yes, he's 27. Okay, so 27-year-old white male. He's a little bit older than some of the people, college students who haven't had all the experience he did. He never heard of any issues Maddie had with anyone. He did not know if Maddie used any narcotics. They never spoke of anything personal. He didn't have a car and walked wherever he needed to go around campus. He rode the bus home to Boise and borrowed his brother's pickup while he was in town. Blank did not have any injuries to his hands, arms, or face. At approximately 1:36 p.m., he consented to a DNA sample. ISP Detective Millar arrived on scene and collected a DNA sample from him, which I took custody of and submitted it into evidence for processing. At approximately 1:38 p.m., we concluded the interview. These would be pretty interesting interview audios to get, so I might go for trying to get especially the most interesting ones. So that's it for him for this portion. I don't know how many other people they interviewed more than once. Of course, I hear when we get to Dylan's interview, of course, the roommates, the surviving roommates interviews, I'm sure we'll see multiple interviews there. Okay, now we've got our first interview with Dylan Mortensen, at least the first report that appears. I'm assuming maybe this is the first time ISP interviewed her. I know Dylan, one of the surviving roommates, was interviewed Sunday, November 13th. And this is saying the report is dated November 20th, and it's talking about a November 17th interview, but I know Dylan was interviewed earlier than that. So maybe this is the first time ISP is talking to her. Detective Victoria M. Gooch and MPD Sergeant Dustin Baker interviewed Dylan, so this is at her residence in Boise. Blank, an attorney in Moscow, Idaho. Interview was also audio recorded by me and Sergeant Blaker. I like when people record, have multiple devices going. One audio might sound closer than the others. So this interview has been downloaded onto a thumb drive and it was maintained in this care. So this is how I know it was Dylan. White female, born in 2003, 19 years old. And before I even get into her interview, this is the first one I've read in this paperwork. But people are already, of course, going nuts on social media, especially the pro-burgers, going so nuts about how Dylan contradicts herself. So I want to see her different interviews, what the contradictions are, and how a lot of it sounded plausible to me. Once we see how much she drank, oh my goodness, this one jug, we'll see, we'll get to it. It's crazy. So I understand why certain things would have been very confusing to her. You guys know I'm not victim shaming, and I have the utmost just respect for these survivors, and I'm not going to attack them. So it starts November 17th at approximately 12:05, right after noon. Right after noon, they talked to Dylan. It was ISP Detective again, Victoria Gooch, MPD Department Sergeant Dustin Baker. So it was multiple people there interviewing Dylan at her residence in Boise. It occurred with, I guess, Dylan's attorney present via computer. Oh, her attorney was present via computer, audio, video. I was hoping they got the interview on audio, video. I don't know if it's just on audio. So this is an attorney in Moscow. Dylan already knew, 4 days later, she needed an attorney to help guide her through all of this. So it was audio recorded, thumb drive, again, case management, interview downloaded. Dylan stated the following. She is a sophomore at the University of Idaho studying pre-physical therapy. She has been a University of Idaho student for both years, freshman and this year, her sophomore year. She had been residing at the residence where the incident occurred since August 2022. So Dylan had just moved in there. You might remember Kaylee's photo, or was it Maddie's, of all the girls saying, "Meet the new roommates." Imagine just moving to your house in college. Sophomore, you're like, ooh, my sophomore year, I'm not a freshman anymore. August 2022, and then just months later, a couple of months or more later, it's this horrible slaughter. Okay, so Dylan's friend Blank and she moved into the residence, and the other female roommates she knew through their sorority. Maddie and Xana prior to this year, and had also met Kaylee before. But Kaylee belonged to another sorority. She explained Kaylee was a senior in school. Now, for those of you who've read the Idaho 4 book, we know how heartbroken Maddie and Kaylee were when they didn't get into the same sorority at first. And then how it all worked out eventually and how they ended up leaving their sororities. Anyway, Dylan described Xana as being a year older than herself. Dylan also described 2 additional females, Blank and Blank, but they were not residents in the house. Dylan explained Blank introduced her to Xana last year. Both Blank and Blank reside in Blank apartments, probably, the White Houses, maybe, and apartment complexes on campus that houses sorority members. I don't know if those are the Whites or a different set of apartments they're talking about. Okay, so Dylan described the layout of their residence and where each of the roommates resided, paraphrased based on her description of their residence. Like, when you walk in, there's a door, there's downstairs with a bathroom and Blank bedroom. That must be Bethany's bedroom because she's talking about downstairs. When you walk into the door, there is a hallway with her bedroom, so that must be the front door with that wreath on it. There's a hallway to her bedroom. I'm assuming that means to Bethany's bedroom, and the kitchen and the sliding door. Oh no, she's talking about the second floor, so that got confusing. When you walk into the door, there is a hallway with her bedroom. Okay, so now she's talking about the second floor. The way this is written, or, I don't know. First, she's talking about, okay, you're walking in, there is a door. She must be speaking of the sliding glass door. Now she's saying downstairs with a bathroom and Bethany's bedroom. And then she's saying, okay, again, when you walk into the door, she's talking about the second level, the sliding glass level. When you walk into the door, there's a hallway with Dylan's bedroom. So Dylan's bedroom is on that second level, the sliding glass door level, because there's the kitchen and the sliding door. And upstairs is Kaylee's room and a bathroom and Maddie's room. Xana is on the same floor as Dylan's bedroom. So initially, Dylan was asked to describe what the girls did on the 12th of November, but she described there was a ball on Friday night. So that was that sorority ball we've heard about, November 11th. A Pi, what is it, Pi Beta? I'm trying to remember all the sorority names. A Pi Phi, is that right? Anyway, there was a Pi sorority ball which she briefly attended. So Dylan went to that ball too. She explained she started drinking at 4:30 p.m. on Friday the 11th. She described the individuals at the ball, including all her roommates as well as Ethan and probably his sister, maybe. All of this redaction means, his sister Maisie and maybe also Xana and their dates who were, what is that, Fiji fraternity members? That's my first time, I think, seeing that. And Blank and date. Kaylee was someone's date for the ball. I don't know if we know who that is. Dylan described how, part of me is wondering, was Kaylee Dylan's date for the ball? I don't know, if they just went as friends, because we saw those photos from the Friday night where the girls are all dressed up, and I remember in my mind seeing like Kaylee and Dylan hugging. Dylan described how she got home on Friday night using an Uber from the Pi Ball to their residence. She explained she and her roommates normally have someone else as their Uber driver, but not on the night of the 11th. She does not remember the name of the Uber driver on Friday night. This was around 8:30 p.m. She explained she and the roommates trust whoever the other driver was. She advised the party initially transitioned to the Blank, so they went somewhere else. But she got bored and wanted to go home. It was Dylan, Maddie, and Xana and Ethan regarding the roommates who attended the ball. Eventually, a group from the Pi event transitioned to Blank and the other roommate's house, and there was a party that continued there until the early morning hours of November 12th. Now, I'm not sure what house they're describing here. I'm not sure whose home, the party transitioned to here. But Dylan requested to look at her cell phone during this point in the interview to verify the timeline, which is smart. She was advised she could use her cell phone to provide times during her interview. Dylan advised the other individuals that came to the house on Friday night, so do they mean, to the 1122 King Road house, were Blank, Initially, she said it was blank, but corrected herself to say, no, it was not that person, but someone else who came to the house, and blank as well as herself. Now, they were consuming large amounts of alcohol and playing music. She went to bed a little after 12:10 a.m. And then she added she went to bed sometime between 12:10 a.m. and 12:30 a.m. that morning, November 12th. So this is like late into the night Friday. She's going to bed basically kind of like right after midnight, technically Saturday morning. Dylan advised eventually Maddie came home, eventually Kaylee, but she was not certain about where Kaylee was when she went to bed. She then explained on Saturday morning, November 12th, at approximately 12:15, she then corrected the time to 11:44 a.m., the roommates went together to get coffee and to the store to get more alcohol. I was like, wow, it's like a quarter to noon, it's Saturday, they're going to get coffee, so they're going to, I don't know where to get the coffee. I was wondering that. Can you imagine her last day with them? Ugh, and she didn't know. They still had champagne from the previous weekend, which she explained was the U of I parents weekend. So I was like, wow, did they have the champagne for parents? I mean, I like champagne. I don't like, hard liquor, so I wondered. So Dylan explained the plans for that Saturday night included a Chi fraternity party on campus. She explained Kaylee was not going to this function because she was a senior, and typically seniors do not attend the frat functions on campus because they're old enough to go to the local clubs. So that makes sense. The ones who are 21 and up, they don't want to hang out with the younger kids. They can go to the real clubs. So Dylan explained she was going to the Chi party. She further explained at one point Maddie was at this function but left the function to go to the club with Kaylee. So yeah, Maddie went off to the corner club with Kaylee. Okay, Saturday. They were all at the house together at 5 p.m. on Saturday, November 12th. Dylan stated Kaylee decided to go and take a nap. Dylan, Maddie, and Xana, maybe, and someone else, and she were on the couch watching a movie. So Kaylee's up there taking a nap. The other girls are on the couch watching a movie. Dylan explained they were all together Saturday afternoon at the house, and they all decided to take naps, and each of the girls set their alarm for 8 p.m. Dylan believes Ethan may have come over to the house at this time, but she was not certain if this is the time Ethan came over or if he showed up at a different time. Dylan explained she had an assignment due in her Psychology 215 course, so she posted the assignment at approximately 10:12 p.m. She believes she then left the house at approximately 10:30 Saturday night. That makes sense. A lot of college kids can turn in their assignments. Some of them are due, by midnight, so I understand why Dylan would have gotten that psychology assignment in online at 10:12. She left the house at 12:30. When Dylan left the house, Kaylee was still there with one of her friends. However, she does not know the friend's name. She described the friend was female and nice. So there were, a lot of people around, sounds like. After leaving the house, she saw Maddie between their residence and the blank. So I'm like, where was Maddie? Was she between 1122 King Road and the Whites, those houses, those, apartments? I don't know, but Maddie was holding a box of White Claws while she was walking towards their house. She advised she talked to Maddie, and then Dylan continued on to the Chi function. She believed Maddie was going back to their residence to get ready to go to the club with Kaylee. Wow, was that the last time she saw Maddie, I wonder? Maybe not. Anyway, Sergeant Blaker asked Dylan to give more details about the route she took when she encountered Maddie, and she provided those details in this interview. She explained when she got to the Chi function, she wanted to meet up with Xana and Blank, and she called Xana on her cell phone to find out which apartment they were in, and she was told they were in apartment blank. Others who were at apartment blank at this time were Ethan, Xana, and other people. Dylan explained she and Blank were going in and out of the fraternity lodge together for part of the night. Dylan explained there were not a lot of people at this function, so they were just kind of like party hopping, I guess, just going around to see different friends, maybe find out what's the most fun party going on. Dylan further explained after she met up with Blank and the two of them then went to Blank apartment. She was with Ethan and Xana during part of the night, and Dylan explained Ethan had been trying to get in contact with his sister. Isn't that sweet? Because she had been upset about something and he was worried about her. But Dylan didn't know what the issue was. She remembered Blank told her brother she had not been answering her cell phone because she had been sleeping. So we know Maisie did tell Ethan, Maisie did say, rather, I wish she could have told Ethan, she was going to bed and he was just texting her and he had said, I love you. If you watch the Idaho 4 documentary and read the book, you'll know be able to fill in some of these details. This was so cute how Ethan was trying to get his sister out Saturday night. So Dylan described Ethan as being very protective of his sister as well as protective with all the roommates. The group then went to visit Blank, who she had previously met through Xana, and Blank was also there, including she and all these people. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were there, also there, as well as 6, 7, potentially 8 people. This is this crazy alcohol I read about. When asked how much alcohol she had consumed, Dylan explained she had been playing Rage Cage, which she described was a drinking game. And when she awakened from her nap, she consumed 3 White Claws with an alcohol content of 5%. I was like, yuck. I mean, I've had White Claws before. They're kind of good in terms of just if you want something light, you know, something you're not trying to get lit, but this Rage Cage stuff, oh my goodness, listen to this. She denied there was any drug use, and she did state Xana and Ethan used Blank. I wonder if that's the, you know how they found the rolled up bill? Oh, no, that's probably Coke. But also remember they found that rolled up bill, and I think there was was it crushed Adderall? I'll verify that. But that's probably Coke. But then Dylan advised neither Maddie or Kaylee did drugs. She explained she nor Blank never touched that stuff. So while there have been reports that Xana and Ethan got into some things, you know, not so healthy things, all the other roommates sounds like, and I'm assuming Bethany included, never touched drugs, just alcohol. Now listen to this Borg thing. She described the alcohol used at blank and blank residence, which included Blank consuming a whole Borg. Now I don't know who did that. That wouldn't have been one of the victims. Obviously, the victims' names are not redacted. Anyway, someone consumed a whole Borg, in which she also consumed some of the Borg. So Dylan consumed some of the Borg, and someone else consumed a whole Borg. Parenthetically, Vicky Gooch wrote, like I would have to do, Google search it. Based on a Google search I conducted, relative to writing this report, a Borg is an alcoholic beverage which requires taking an empty gallon container and filling it halfway with water, adding vodka and enough, I don't even know what this MIO is, I should look that up, MIO to make the taste of vodka disappear, which is very scary. The cocktail is often referred to as a Borg, but the nickname doubles as an acronym that stands for the drink's full name, Blackout Rage Gallon. Now, isn't that scary? That reminds me of my days in college where, you know, we would consume sometimes grain alcohol. And the scary thing about grain alcohol is when the taste of it disappears, that's what's scary. Because if you make a drink where you can't taste the level of alcohol you're drinking, it's almost like, you know, you're not controlling yourself. You're not, giving yourself, if you're drinking a strong liquor, then you know, oh, this is strong. You can kind of, pace yourself. But this is scary. Filling it halfway with water, adding vodka. It sounds gross too. And Mio, is that sweet? Make the taste of the vodka disappear. It's horrible. I'm like, don't drink Borgs. Oh my goodness. But this alcohol consumption, and again, I'm not judging her. I'm not victim blaming anyone. A lot of us have been drunk college kids, let me tell you. But for the grace of God, I'm still alive. But this type of thing can contribute to me understanding why Dylan was so confused and her actions later on. So, Dylan described Blank and Blank as being extremely intoxicated and that she had continued to consume alcohol because of Blank's intoxicated condition. Dylan advised she invited someone to come back to her residence with her to watch movies, and because of Blank's intoxicated condition, she called a sobro, which she described is involving a sober freshman fraternity member who is a designated driver for frat and sorority members who are consuming alcohol to drive them to their homes safely. At least they have those sober bros. That's so cool. She advised it was only she and Blank that went back to the residence using the sobro. She did not believe anyone else was home. If people are going to get so irresponsibly, blackout drunk, which again, No shade. We've all done it. I'm glad they at least have the Sobros. I don't even know if they have to, pay anything, because some people are like, who are these people driving them around? And, you read a lot of criticisms, but I'm grateful some people are designated drivers. Maybe they don't drink at all. Some of them are off duty like Uber people, just kind of giving them rides. 34. When the two of them got home, she believed was sometime between 1:15 a.m. and 1:30 a.m. I don't know if she was with Bethany or who. November 13th, morning of the murders, unfortunately, so Dylan was intoxicated, and because of that, she does not remember what time it actually was, but she believed it was between the two times mentioned. Now, coming up, Dylan's going to adjust her times because I guess there's a time change between Mountain Time and Pacific Coast Time. Initially, I think Dylan's reading, her times the way she's looking at her phone. By this time, she's already in Pacific Coast Time. So she's going to realize, oops, I've been kind of giving you guys the wrong times. But for now, Dylan further advised she made popcorn in the kitchen and she and Blank watched Vampire Diaries together. Whoever that is. Approximately 20 minutes later, someone returned home. The three of them laid down and continued to watch Vampire Diaries. She believes Blank may have walked home, and then she advised she does not know what time Blank and Blank went to bed. Dylan had already gone to bed and does not know when Blank may have left or when Blank went to bed. So, at approximately 2 or 2:30 a.m., she awakened because Maddie and Kaylee had arrived home with grub truck food. They had mac and cheese, which Blank explained they normally got. So, Dylan's like, okay, they normally get the mac and cheese carbonara, we remember, from the grub truck. Nothing new for those girls, part of their routine. All four of them were together, which included Blank, Maddie, and Kaylee. So I'm assuming it's Dylan, Bethany, Maddie, and Kaylee. Dylan advised they were taking selfie videos. I wonder where those videos are. I don't know if they got a chance to post those, All the girls talked about getting grub truck food. She did not believe Xana and Ethan were home because their bedroom door was open and she did not see them. And she discussed whether she may have been mistaken about this fact. And then she said she was certain she saw their door was open, and they were not home. She then went to bed, which she advised was after texting Blank, the Uber driver. So we've seen some information before about Dylan's text, that morning basically, and, talking to her dad and texting the roommates and all that stuff. We've seen that. Dylan looked at her phone to determine what time she had texted Blank, the Uber driver, and said her phone said 3:10 a.m. But here it is. After further discussion, Dylan admitted she was somewhat, I guess they mean, confused about whether she was using Moscow time or Boise time. And Dylan explained her timeline may be off by an hour because of this issue. That makes sense. So specifically during this interview, referencing Boise time instead of providing the time it would have been in Moscow when these events were occurring on the 13th of November. So she explained she uses Snapchat as well as her cell phone to communicate with her friends. She advised if there is lack of texted communications on her cell phone, it is because she had transitioned to using Snapchat app for her method of communication. So after the crime, I guess maybe Dylan stopped texting people. I don't know if she has an iPhone or what, I gotta see. But I don't know if she stopped, just texting people and then just was Snapchatting people. Because maybe Dylan was being overrun with text. Who knows how many texts she might have had. But maybe her Snapchat, I don't know if she had it more private or she knew, pared people down to only the people she really knew, and maybe that's how she had changed her communication by just, snapping them. She advised her login information for Snapchat is this, and her password is either that or whatever. She denied knowing her roommates' passwords to their cell phones. Now, while they were together, she talked about ordering grub truck, and she then texted Blank, the Uber driver, at approximately 3:10 a.m. She explained she texted to Blank, "Are you driving by chance?" So maybe they wanted to go back to the grub truck, like Maddie and Kaylee came home with all this good smelling carbonara, I'm sure. Maybe all the other roommates were like, oh, that smells so good. Maybe, I'm making this up in my head, but maybe Dylan and Bethany, they were like, oh, they discussed going to the grub truck. And so maybe that's why Dylan texted the Uber guy. At approximately 3:13 a.m., he texted her back. I'm assuming it's a he. She then went to bed. She does not believe Blank ever came to their house because she never responded to his text about the fact that he was still driving. So she's like hitting him up, are you driving? And I guess he's like, yes. but she never said, oh, come get us, we want to go to the grub truck. So she advised that the Uber driver is this guy. He's in his 30s, he's married, and has one child. Yes, I think that guy was mentioned in the book too. So Dylan advised all the girls knew him and liked him. Dylan advised she's not certain if she stayed awake to watch more Vampire Diary episodes or if she went to sleep. She was not certain if she locked her bedroom door, and she was not certain if she locked the sliding door, because she was the one who usually did. Isn't that amazing? She usually locked the sliding door. But she also volunteered in her statement that she believed Moscow was a safe place, so the sliding glass door was not always locked. So even though Dylan can't beat herself up, because even if she did lock that sliding glass door, we've read in other documents that it was common knowledge that even if the sliding glass door was locked, people could lift up on it and still slide it open. Dylan doesn't remember if anyone locked the sliding glass door before she went to bed. She was the first to go to bed ahead of the other roommates. She had already been asleep. She was awakened by Kaylee and Maddie getting home. They had their grub truck, food. I know she talked about, okay, maybe we should all go to the grub truck or whatever they said. She texted the Uber guy, never responded to him, and then she went to bed. Now this has also made me feel for Dylan. She explained that she previously has had a lot of dreams where she had been kidnapped in her dreams. And she further explained these types of dreams started in high school, and she knew they were dreams and would let those things happen in her dreams because she realized they were dreams. She advised she does not suffer from anxiety and denied prior life trauma other than divorced parents. So at that point, she didn't really suffer from anxiety, but we know after the crimes just how much anxiety it gave her by us watching her victim impact statement and just shaking in her emotions. So I felt bad for her. And of course, I wondered if these were kind of prophetic dreams, where she had these disturbing dreams where she felt like someone was kidnapping her. But now here's the moment. Dylan explained she was awakened to a noise sometime between 4 a.m. and 4:20 a.m. She was asked to explain the amount of alcohol she had consumed before going to bed, and she again explained while she was playing Rage Cage, which included the White Claws, part of someone's Borg, and maybe 2 or 3 more drinks, White Claws, at someone else's house. Ugh, that's like yuck. I don't know how much of that Borg she had. I mean, the White Claws, they're only 5%, and so she had those, but ugh. I don't know how well she can hold her liquor too. You know, all the girls were pretty thin, and you're like, oh my goodness, sounds like a lot of alcohol. But she denied drinking after she left someone's house. Dylan advised she had been consuming the alcohol until approximately 1:15 to 1:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. She denied drinking any more alcohol after she and Blank got back to her residence. So maybe it wasn't Bethany, because you think they would say after she and Blank got back to their residence. So I don't know who Dylan was with. At 4:22 a.m., she confirmed this information by looking at the texted communication on a cell phone. She texted Kaylee asking her what's going on. She advised her phone said 5:22 a.m., which she advised would have been, of course, 4:22 a.m. Moscow time. She advised around 4 a.m. or 4:20 a.m. she heard Kaylee singing and playing music. Oh, this is the scary part. So people are like, was Brian Koberger coming in there playing music? And other people were like, no, I doubt he would come in there making that much noise. And was it really Kaylee? Was it her wailing or something in agony? We don't know. And where was the music coming from? Was there any music brought into the home, or was there any music turned on? You guys know how we see scary movies and you always see like some guy turning up the stereo really loudly just to drown out what he's about to do. Did Brian do that? Anyway, Dylan heard who she believed was Kaylee walking up the stairs, and she advised she heard Kaylee say, "Someone's here." So that's been pretty consistent. And she sounded frantic. So Kaylee sounding frantic, Dylan hears her say, "Someone's here." Dylan described Kaylee's tone as somewhat between talking and yelling it, like someone's here. She believed it was Kaylee who was walking up the stairs with Murphy. So she could be wrong here. Dylan might have really heard Xana going up the stairs, responding to whatever Xana may have heard going on. And what a hero Xana is to me, that she literally went up there like, wait, something's going on up there. You know, Xana recognized, hey, Maddie and Kaylee might need my help. You know, I hear them in distress. If only Xana had had a weapon. You know, all these what ifs you can't help but think about. I wish he had something that could have stopped Kohberger in his tracks. Anyway, Dylan said she heard who she believed to be Kaylee then running down the stairs. She advised Murphy was barking at this time. So instead of Kaylee running down the stairs, it was probably maybe Xana who had ran up and maybe Xana running back down, and maybe it was Brian following Xana. And this was a whole lot of redactions here in 52. Dylan advised she has been blank. We don't know what all that says. 53. She does not believe Murphy is normally a barker. Dylan would recognize when Murphy was barking in an inordinate or not an ordinary type of way. Dylan further stated she believed it was Kaylee who was running down the stairs after she heard her say, "Someone is here." She further explained, Dylan does not know if she actually heard this or whether she was drunk and did not actually hear any of this. She heard the footsteps of who she believed to be Kaylee. She explained all the girls wear Doc Martens, so maybe that's kind of a heavy kind of boot. And that is what she believed she was hearing Kaylee coming down the stairs wearing her Doc Martens because of the sound of the footsteps coming down the stairs. So again, Dylan is not at this point an eyewitness. She's just an ear witness. She's been asleep, awakened, and then asleep again, and she had been drinking a lot. So I do not blame her when Dylan is doubting her own memory. She's like, did I really hear Kaylee say someone is here? I don't blame her. It's a traumatic event. She doesn't even understand the level of the trauma going on. She's in fear, and I can sympathize with Dylan because there have been times in my life too where I've looked at something and I'm like, did I really see that, So at this point, now, we have more details that we could refer to on the 911 call, but I believe it's Dylan called someone at 4:19 a.m. So it must be Dylan calling Bethany since it's redacted at 4:19 a.m. Then she called Xana at 4:20. Then she called Kaylee at 4:20 a.m. and then Bethany again at 4:20 a.m. So this is weird. This is where Bethany advised Dylan. I hate the way this is written, but the gist of it is Bethany, I believe, is telling Dylan that she saw some kind of fireworks. Dylan texted Bethany a last time at 4:27 a.m. before she went to Bethany's room. So we don't know what these fireworks were. Was it some kind of flash bang distraction? I don't know. It couldn't have been the flashlight. I'm thinking from Molly, the DoorDash driver. Molly may have left the area at this point. What could those fireworks have been? That's another mystery. The second time when Dylan opened her door, she heard who she believed to be Kaylee crying, and she believed Kaylee was in the second floor bathroom. Now this is sad. This is really, I believe, going to be Xana crying in the second floor bathroom. I don't think Kaylee, was in that second floor bathroom at all. And they'll say as much too. Dylan will change her mind. She then heard a male voice, which she stated she had never heard before, saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." So that's where that period stops. Now, somewhere in these documents, according to News Nation, the voice says, "It's okay, I'm going to help you, Kaylee." So let's see whenever we get to that part. But it's not here on this page. So we're halfway through this document, page 5 of 10. Dylan believed the unidentified male was in the bathroom and with the person who was crying. She believes it was Kaylee who was the one crying. Dylan stated now that she had gathered additional information, she now believes it was probably Xana who was crying. That makes sense. At the moment of hearing the crying, she stated she believed it was Kaylee who was crying. She advised she knows the male's voice was not Ethan's voice. So initially, she's just listening. Dylan's trying to figure out who's doing what. And sometimes you might believe it's a certain person when it's not. Even though you know your roommate's voices, I understand how it could be easy to mix up one woman with another. For example, sometimes I mix up my husband's voice with my son's voice. I might hear someone walking past and I hear someone talking. I'm like, oh, that's my husband. Oh, no, it's my son. So I understand the confusion here and the fact that this is days later. And by this point, Dylan knows, okay, Xana was found. She saw Xana laying there on the second floor on her back, and she might look back and think, oh, wait, when this was going on, I thought it was Kaylee running up and down the stairs, and I thought that was Kaylee's voice crying. But now she realizes that must have been Xana. And that would be horrible if Brian really did follow Xana. I don't know if he followed her into the second floor bathroom or not, but obviously she was found right there in the hallway. She's going to talk about seeing messed up curtains. I think it's Kaylee. Dylan's going to see Kaylee's curtains messed up from the outside and knows, a real tussle went on. But all that's hindsight, of course. But she knows that was not Ethan's voice. I often wonder, so Dylan has this voice in her head, hearing whatever voice, this was. Sunday morning. It's okay, I'm going to help you, blah, blah, blah. And then how much longer afterward did she hear any kind of, December 30th, when did she hear Brian's voice? Once his name came out, he got arrested. The very first time Dylan heard Brian's voice, did she just know it for sure that was him? I often wonder that. Maybe they'll cover it in here in future interviews. We got a lot to get through. Okay, so Dylan described the last episode of Vampire Diaries. That's smart. And she remembered it was two males rescuing a female. Isn't that ironic? She explained it was not violent. She advised the male figure in the last episode was wearing all black, but explained that was normal for the series. So I'm sure interviewers are trying to find out from Dylan a variety of things. First of all, you said you guys were watching Vampire Diaries. What was the episode about? That way cops can go back and, say, okay, were they streaming this whatever 27th episode of whatever series of Vampire Diaries at this time? They can confirm. That would help them confirm the time. And it would also help them confirm, okay, Dylan was watching this Vampire Diaries. There's a male figure wearing all black. Was she dreaming this male figure in her house or not? So I'm sure there was a lot of different reasons they asked her about that. But Dylan is not certain whether she heard Murphy barking during the first time she opened her door, but she advised it was possible he was barking, but Murphy was moving away from the house. So where was Murphy? That's another confusing thing. Some people describe Murphy almost as if he had been let out of that room, but he was found in that room upstairs, so it wasn't like he was running around outside, I believe. She described Murphy was a puppy and blank had just met him in August. She could not describe Murphy as being skittish. So Murphy wasn't the type of pup who was, easily scared, I guess. So Dylan advised she opened and closed her door a total of 3 times. So that's what we've heard before. And the 4th time is when she left her bedroom to go downstairs to Bethany's bedroom. So remember, it's like, run, and she went down there. Dylan advised she continued to call and text her roommates, but received no answers. She provided the times she called and texted her roommates, and the time span she advised would have been between 4:20 a.m. to 4:27 a.m. She advised she never thought about an intruder, and in her mind she stated she was not processing what was occurring as threatening. Now this is why people are giving Dylan a hard time, because they expect her to have like this complete picture in her mind that we have now all this time later. But she didn't know what was truly happening. Dylan advised she believed the male was directing his conversation of who she believed to be was Kaylee. I think they mean at who, so Dylan thought that guy saying, it's okay, I'm going to help you, was talking to Kaylee. But she advised, Dylan said she did not believe the male was directing that statement to her, so Brian wasn't talking to her. In discussing why the offender did not harm her, it was discussed that it was possible the male knew her and wanted to protect her. And she said she understood that was possible, but she denied knowing who the suspect was. So you know how there's some crazy theories of like, oh, Dylan put out the hit. It was her. It was somebody she knew, and that's why she survived. And she's saying, no, I didn't know who this guy was. Dylan further explained she Snapchatted Ethan, but received no answer from Ethan. Dylan thought Ethan was either at blank Kai or was at home. She wasn't certain. Now, the 3rd time Dylan opened her door, she said her vision was blurry or fuzzy, but she saw a figure of someone that was dressed in all black, and they were masked, and he was holding an item of what she initially perceived was a vacuum. But she said that did not make sense to her. She described the suspect as being muscular, but being skinny and toned, like a basketball player. And that kind of does perfectly describe Brian Koberger's, his whole body to me. I see why it's like athletic. Yes, he has some muscles, but not like, like some huge bodybuilder type muscles. He's thin, toned, tall like a basketball player. Dylan described him as being taller than her 5'10" frame. I'm so glad she was able to, stand up kind of and compare her height to his. So she knew, okay, she's like, I'm 5'10". He was taller than her frame by at least 3 inches, so he would have been at least, 6 feet in height or taller. She advised he had to have heard her call Kaylee and Xana, and she thought he would have had to have heard her calling for them, as she was confused as to why he did not come to her room. So this does line up with what we've heard previously. You remember way back when we heard Annie Elise go live and go over some details she had heard. It was really good. This report is lining up with previous reports where Dylan allegedly had called. Now, when they say call, I think they mean previously, before she even maybe got on the phone. Maybe they mean call via phone, or I don't know if they mean Dylan like yelled up the stairs, what's going on up there, or whatever, hold it down, I'm trying to sleep. I don't know what they mean by this. Maybe we'll get more details. So Dylan was confused, saying, okay, this guy must have heard me, calling for them. She was confused. Why didn't he come attack me in my room? Dylan described the item the suspect was holding, which she advised was like a cylinder, and she remembered a cop talking about a bow. So I wonder what she means about that. Like a bow and arrow, like one of those automatic bows, or I just wonder. So she was trying to ascertain if what she saw was in fact shaped like a bow. It doesn't sound like it unless it was like really skinny. A skinny cylinder. Dylan further stated she thought maybe it was a firefighter because of what Bethany had told her about seeing a firecracker. So Dylan's trying to put it together in her mind. Dylan advised he would have been approximately 3 feet away from her. Imagine only being 3 feet away from him. And she believed she saw him walking out the back sliding glass door. He had looked at her before walking out the back door. She was not certain if he could see her whole body or just her head. But I guess she knew Brian saw her. At 4:22 a.m., then Dylan corrected her timeline and stated at 4:23 a.m. she texted Bethany and they conversed about someone wearing all black. And Bethany said something to the effect of, what the F? Why is Xana wearing all black? People are like, wait a minute, why was Bethany saying Xana was wearing all black? But I think Bethany had just misunderstood Dylan's text, because I think before that Dylan had texted Bethany saying she saw someone wearing all black, and I think Bethany maybe misunderstood and said, wait, what the F? Why would Xana be wearing all black? Dylan explained she was not certain if she had been dreaming this or if it was real. Dylan explained she saw the suspect holding something she believed to be a cylinder shaped and also shaped like a triangle at the bottom of the cylinder shape. She advised the suspect was approximately 3 feet away from her and he looked at her but was walking out the sliding door when she saw him. She said she saw his eyebrows, and we're going to see where she calls them bushy. So for all the people claiming, oh, the cops put that in her mouth, no, she said it to the cops. And if we get this audio, whatever it is, audio and or video, we can hear Dylan say it for herself. But I wonder what this cylinder-shaped thing is. Like a triangle at the bottom of a cylinder shape. Like, I wonder how big of a cylinder. I keep wondering, is it something that Brian took with him to put, like, to store the weapon in? Like, he didn't have the knife sheath anymore. Was it big enough to store the weapon in? Was it big enough to, did he have some kind of hazmat suit or something that he took off and placed in the cylinder? Did the cylinder contain the weapon and any clothing he would eventually be wearing? Did he put that in there and bury it somewhere? At approximately 4:23 a.m., she texted Bethany to tell her she saw a masked suspect in their house. So at that same time, it's like 4:23. It's like, I saw a man who's masked, Dylan is saying, and then Bethany's like, what the F? Why is Xana wearing all black? You know how you can be texting someone at the same time? You're just trying to clear up your previous text. But Bethany responded at approximately 4:25 a.m. telling her to come to her bedroom, Bethany's bedroom, and that it's better than being alone. Dylan then left her bedroom after opening her door the 4th time and ran to Bethany's bedroom downstairs. Dylan advised when she left her bedroom, she looked down the hallway to Xana's bedroom and could see Xana on her back in her underwear, but she thought at the time Xana was passed out. So she's like, she's heard all this rumbling going on. She's seen this weird guy leave the house. She gets up enough nerve to run down to Bethany's house. Like, part of her knows something's not right, something scary going on, but the other part of her mind, I believe, is probably trying to say, oh, it's just them messing around. So Dylan stated she never went into Xana's bedroom, and she could only see Xana from the hallway as she was running to get to Bethany's bedroom. Dylan advised she was too scared to go into Xana's room, and she knew Bethany was awake, and she knew to go there because she was scared. So Dylan's mind was just like, make it down to Bethany's bedroom. That's all I want to do. Dylan saw Xana wearing her underwear, and she explained Xana was comfortable enough with the roommates that she would wear her underwear around them, so this was not unusual. So to me, we can't fault Dylan. I know a lot of people do. They expect if they were in Dylan's shoes, they would have valiantly, gone over there to Xana and seen what was going on and called 911 right away. But that's not what happened. And also, we don't know what the lighting situation is. We're about to talk about that now, because some people assume, it was bright lights, you could just see Xana, you could see all the red liquid, and why didn't Dylan see all that? We don't know her perspective. She was already saying it was blurry when she opened that door, even witnessing Brian. So now, when asked about the lighting conditions inside the residence, Dylan advised that possibly Xana's light was on, or the party lights were on. So like those twinkling fairy lights, maybe the ones outside. Yeah, so if those, I'm trying to get a perspective, you know how they had those string lights outside hanging on the balcony or under the balcony or whatever. I don't know if those were on, casting light into the whole place, or the kitchen light, how well that would illuminate the hallway to Xana's room, if at all. We know the DoorDash driver reported seeing lights on. I think there may have been a lot of lights on, but how well Xana was lit down that hallway in her position, we don't know. Dylan does concede there were some lights on. When asked about the lighting conditions inside the residence, Dylan advised that possibly Xana's light was on, or the party lights were on, and that is how she was able to see Xana, because otherwise she would not have been able to see her lying on the floor without any lights on. That makes sense. If it were pitch black, she obviously wouldn't have been able to see Xana lying there. If it were pitch black, she wouldn't have been able to see Xana obviously lying there. Dylan was not certain if the bathroom lights were on, but she was not certain what lights were on, if any. Dylan advised Xana did not say anything. Dylan stated she did not think anything was wrong. So I know a lot of people are like, what? But maybe, I don't know if she's seen Xana passed out before in odd places and woke up the next day and it's like, whoa, that was really some bender or whatever. I don't know what their history was. But Dylan later offered she may have been able to see Xana lying on the floor because they also had a Scentsy light. So that's those things that are melting MLM things that smell good, I guess, like candle wax or whatever. And it could have been that she was able to see Xana from the Scentsy light. Dylan explained she has been trying to determine what was real from everything she had been talking about with Sergeant Blaker and myself. She advised she knew the time with blank, Kaylee, and Maddie were real. If this is Bethany, Kaylee, and Maddie, they have videos together. They did selfie videos, so Dylan could confirm in her mind, okay, we really did, watch Vampire Diaries, and we really did do these selfie videos. But she was not certain how blank and blank got home that day. Dylan further explained she has been trying to piece things together because some things do not make sense to her. Dylan said she's being truthful, but some of what she has been discussing she is not certain is factual. That totally makes sense to me. She has been working through it to try to remember what happened. So Dylan was asked if the female who was crying was saying anything, and she advised no, the female was only crying and the male was the only one talking. So that makes sense, because imagine if Xana heard all that rumbling. What if Xana ran upstairs just expecting to see, I don't know what, who knows, some frat guy messing around, or, maybe Kaylee doing one of her pranks. Xana just ran up there to see what was going on. And imagine being confronted by the scene that Xana may have witnessed. Xana may have witnessed Maddie and Kaylee really harmed, and at that point, she's running for her life. Like, Xana ran back downstairs probably to go try and wake Ethan, or who knows what. And that's when she started crying. And who knows if Brian had injured Xana at that point and she was fighting with him. But I understand why Xana would have been crying. But Dylan described the item the suspect was holding, again, as cylinder-shaped. And it was also a triangular-shaped. So I don't know what that looked like. She could not remember if the lights were on or off when she encountered the male suspect. She advised she does not know if this is even something she saw or if it was something she dreamed. So she is being honest, and I see how they're going back through and probably asking her the same question again and again, several questions. And Dylan is doubting herself. She's been through so much trauma at this point. I mean, imagine her friends dying in a horrible way. The culprit is still out there. She's so afraid. She's with her parents. She's sleeping in bed with her parents because she's so afraid, or at least with her mom. You know, they're divorced, I guess. She's sleeping in bed. You know, a 19-year-old, she won't even leave the bed of her parents. That's how traumatized she was. So I understand why she's trying to say, look, I'm being honest with you guys. You know, I'm not 100% saying I totally know this is what I saw. Because after all, she was just, it had been a rough night. They'd been partying. She was half asleep. Imagine if you've been drinking too much and you just pass out. And I wanted to say dead to the world, but you pass out. But then imagine being awakened with all this chaos going on. And I'm sure, of course, that's why Brian chose this time. He probably watched them. He probably waited until he knew they would be at their drunkest, their most vulnerable, and passed out. Because remember his searches, those were his kinks, if you will. You know, we'll go over those at some point, but it was kind of like basically incapacitated people, passed out girls. Now, Dylan advised the last time she saw Xana was at blank house at approximately 11:04 p.m. Dylan confirmed this by checking her cell phone. Xana had been holding a white claw. She was at blank at 12:49 a.m. Dylan further advised Xana and Ethan did not stay at Ethan's house with any frequency. We've heard that. Because of Ethan's grades, he could not reside at the frat house. He had his own apartment, but she does not know where his apartment is because she had never been there. So Dylan knows Kaylee and Maddie were home when she went to bed, and blank Bethany, I guess, and from when she saw Xana lying on the floor, but she was not certain about whether Ethan was home. So she didn't even know Ethan was still in there in the bed. That makes sense. Maybe she didn't see him, lying up in the bed. Dylan advised she left blank and blank house at approximately 12:49 a.m. to return home. So they're, tightening up her timeline, getting it straight. Dylan said she is certain at 3:11 a.m., which through discussion might have been 2:11 a.m. Moscow time. Bethany, Kaylee, Maddie, and she were all in the house. She was not certain about Xana and Ethan because she does not know when they came home. Dylan denied perceiving a threat even after encountering the male in the hallway. She said there were always people coming in and out of their house all the time. Dylan denied remembering what his face looked like, and she said she could see that his head and mouth were covered, but she could see his eyebrows. And further advised she was not certain whether she could see his nose. Now, at some point, I think she's going to say he has a big nose, but that doesn't mean it was uncovered. Maybe she could tell under, the balaclava. When asked if she knew what a balaclava was, and she said no, so I asked Sergeant Blaker to show Dylan a picture of a balaclava from his cell phone, and upon looking at the picture of a balaclava, she said, quote, "It could have been, that could have been it." She does not remember seeing his mouth or his nose, but she could see his eyebrows. When asked if any of her roommates told her about prior incidents involving anything that concerned them, and she advised Kaylee had told them blank and the other roommates about an incident a month prior when she was outside with Murphy about a subject who had been watching her. The subject was in the apartments above the girl's residence. Now this part confused me. It says the subject was in the apartments above the girl's residence. So where was this person? Previously we thought, okay, Brian probably drove up to that parking lot behind the house. At some points, maybe he was off in those kind of wooded areas searching or looking at the girls. Maybe he sat in his car sometimes looking at them. I don't know. But this says the subject was in the apartments above the girl's residence. Kind of like someone inside one of those apartments. Which ones? Which apartment? Was it just someone else watching them? Dylan further explained that 2 to 3 weeks ago, while at Winco, Kaylee told her about a male subject who followed her from the Winco store all the way to Kaylee's car. Even when Kaylee went to leave, the subject was standing by Kaylee's car. Also, 2 to 3 weeks ago, all of the roommates went to Starbucks together. And when they got home, their front door was wide open. And they do not believe it had been open when they left. She explained there were prior issues with the front door, so she said it was possible the door opened because there had been a snowstorm, and she explained possibly the wind caused the door to open. Also, when they got home, the washer was going, which she described was not unusual, but this also concerned her. Now, why was the washer going when they got home? Like, who had started the washer? And what time is she talking about? Is she talking about when the door was open this same day, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I guess? They were off at Starbucks. They come home, their door's wide open, the washer was going, but it concerned her. So I'm wondering, had Brian been in that house before? Did he start the washer? We're going to see other instances. I'm just hearing about all these, crazy instances where people have, gone ahead and read stuff, where stuff has been moved in people's homes. So part of me wonders, was this Brian going in their home, starting the washer? Were there clothes in there? That's the stuff I want to know. I want to know more details. Was he doing this to freak people out? Or was it just, one of the roommates had started the wash before they left for Starbucks and maybe Dylan didn't know it? But Dylan explained because of these things, they went to get Ethan's golf clubs to protect themselves when they searched the house. Stuff happens like this, I get it. Like when I lived in these apartments, high-rise, right across from St. Louis University in St. Louis, one time my roommate and I came home and our door was just slightly open and we were scared and we didn't want to enter. We went and got someone, but it's like we figured out perhaps it was just, the suction of the wind and the door wasn't really locked and somehow it opened. I don't know. So the girls were scared enough, and imagine back then they got Ethan's golf clubs. They're probably walking around with his golf clubs, looking around the house, found no one. And so they probably told themselves, oh, we're being silly. Nobody was in here. So Dylan has a number of reasons to discount the things she saw November 13th. And I see why even more so where, her mind was telling her, oh, something crazy is going on November 13th. But then another part of her mind is probably telling her, oh, this is just like the time before when we walked around with those golf clubs and we were being silly, no one was in here, and they're going to call me a scaredy cat. Dylan explained weeks prior to the 13th, Kaylee had told the roommates she heard a woman scream, but no one else heard it. So I don't know what that was about. Whether it was some woman screaming, playing, someone around the house, people always in and out of their house. So many reasons not to be alarmed and not to panic and not to assume the worst, but then also reasons to see a pattern of something bad potentially about to happen, and it did happen by November 13th. Dylan was asked if she was telling either Sergeant Blaker or anything to prevent us from solving this, and she advised no, that she understood my question. She advised she knew she did not sleep through the whole incident because she has texted communications and other things that she knows would have required her to be awake. So they're like, you're not misleading us, right? You're not pretending like you can't remember stuff, right? Dylan's like, no. Even the stuff Dylan wasn't sure about, thank God she had, hard, solid proof. She had those selfie videos. She knew that was real. She knew Vampire Diaries was real. I'm sure, they found the grub truck food, maybe container. So that would be, real. Like, okay, this is a real memory. I really remember Maddie and Kaylee coming in with this food. And I really have a text where I texted this Uber guy. And I really have the text where I texted the roommates and Snapchatted Ethan and tried to get in touch with them. So Dylan advised she knows what she heard, especially about hearing who she believed was Kaylee crying and the male voice telling her he was there for her. Why would he even say that? Ugh. Dylan stated again she does not know how much of what she had been telling us was not factual because she's still processing the events. So she's just saying, look, I'm trying to confirm what's real, trying to confirm what's not, what might have been my imagination, sleep, dream, I'm sure drunk. When asked why she believes she was spared after the male suspect saw her, Dylan says she does not know why, and she does not believe anyone ever tried to open her door during the time he was in the house. And he could have easily done so, and why he would have passed by her room multiple times. She volunteered that to come through the sliding glass door, the person would have had to have scaled a tall wall. I don't know what she means by that. To come through the sliding glass door. This confused me last night in the middle of the night when I was reading this. So to come through the sliding glass door, the person would have had to scale a tall wall. I know that the person would have had to walk down through those steep woods from the parking lot behind their home to get to the sliding glass door and come through it. But I don't know what she means, scale a tall wall. Like, of course, the person would have had to scale a wall to get up to Maddie's balcony, but I don't understand that. Anyway, Dylan advised, and that's why I want to hear this audio. We can hopefully hear it for ourselves. Dylan advised the suspect would have known her room would have been occupied because he appeared to have known the layout of the house. So, the way Brian was probably moving around easily, like that weird layout, and he knew where to go, he had probably studied this house so many times. Dylan also said it could have been someone who was in the house last year when the other girls were living in the house. So she's just brainstorming, like maybe this is someone who's been here before and that's how they know the layout. Dylan advised there was no one she knows who would have wanted to hurt the girls, and the girls were loved by everyone. Dylan said she had never heard even rumors which were negative about any of the victims. When asked about Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, okay, so now we're talking about Jack DeCure, Dylan advised the breakup was mutual and they have their dog in common, and Jack comes to the residence and plays with Murphy, and he and Kaylee continued to be friends. When asked if they co-parented Murphy, she said yes. Kaylee told her the relationship with Jack, it had run its course. Dylan thought Jack had handled the breakup well because every time he came to their house, there did not seem to be an issue. Dylan brought up the name whatever, but she mispronounced his last name during the interview as someone she and the others believed might be involved. But she was reluctant to say he was a suspect because she knows how damaging to his reputation that could be if he were not involved. So Dylan was giving her thoughts, and she didn't want to falsely, accuse someone. Lord knows Dylan has been falsely accused enough herself. So Dylan advised she was told by Blank, Xana's best friend, that Blank once punched a friend of theirs in the stomach last year, but did not know the circumstances as to why. Dylan advised that recently Kaylee started talking to someone, but seemed okay with that. So Jack may have seemed okay with whomever Kaylee was talking to. So when we get to Jack's interview, we'll probably know a lot more. I feel like the Moscow PD documents weren't as redacted as these. I could be wrong, but you could kind of infer a lot more. Okay, here we go. Dylan offered her DNA. Sergeant Blaker secured a swab from Blank. At the conclusion of the interview, she advised she advised there might be difficult to locate the offender's DNA because they had conducted a deep clean of their residence leading up to the parents' weekend. That makes sense. They were like deep cleaning before moms and dads came in town. But when asked about when the deep clean of the residence occurred, it would have been before the weekend of the crimes. So that actually probably helped that they did a deep clean prior to the crimes. Parents' weekend, I don't know exactly when Parents' weekend was, but it probably helped that they did do a deep clean because maybe that kind of gave them a base level of DNA, so that when Brian brought his DNA in there on the knife sheath, I don't know, maybe it was easier to eliminate others. But Dylan advised there was evidence left in the residence, and she sighed and said she was glad to hear that there was evidence found at the scene. They kind of put her mind at ease. They probably didn't tell her, oh, we found a knife sheath with someone's, single donor DNA on it. She explained her, and then it's a whole bunch of redactions. When asked if Dylan would be able to provide a description to a police composite artist, she said she would not be able to describe enough of the suspect to be helpful. Here comes the bushiness. She further advised the only thing she remembered about his face was that his eyebrows were bushy. So these are Dylan's own words. According to this document, she said, I just remember bushy eyebrows. That's Dylan's words. When we get the audio, we'll be able to hear it. Some people are like, oh, cops put that in her mouth. They're the ones who said he had bushy eyebrows. People just bending over backwards to try and make Brian Kohberger not guilty for some reason. It's so weird to me. Anyway, it's good that Dylan was honest in saying, look, I didn't see enough of his face to, tell a police composite artist even what to draw. So that's probably why we never saw, here's what our suspect looks like. Here's a drawing. Dylan advised she was confused about why the offender would have taken the patio door out of the residence because of the drop-off from the patio. So this is another thing that kind of confused me. Maybe Dylan was assuming he went out that patio door and then came down to the parking lot in front of the house, as opposed to perhaps Brian went out that sliding glass door and then climbed up behind the house. Maybe he had parked back there. We'll see how much more we find out. Dylan advised she remembered that cars do come by their residence a lot, and she said there was a black truck driving past someone's window, and she further said she was not absolutely certain if it was a black truck, but there was a vehicle that went by their residence and she could see the tail lights, but she did not remember if the headlights were on. But what drew her attention to it was the red lights on the back of the truck, and when asked if she meant brake lights, she said yes. When asked what occurred after she went into Bethany's bedroom, she said they eventually fell asleep, and when she awakened, she was lying next to Bethany in Bethany's bed. She advised a friend of theirs, blank and blank, mother, are planning a memorial event, and that has helped her emotionally. So this must be maybe when Ethan's memorial was being, planned. So maybe she said, oh yeah, Ethan and Macy's mother are planning a memorial event. Maybe she said Ethan and Hunter's mother are planning the memorial event. She advised someone has been crying a lot over this. Maybe she meant Bethany, has been crying a lot, but Dylan has not been crying, and blank has explained to her why she has not been showing emotions. She explained, maybe this is her psychologist or someone, used the words disassociate to describe her emotions. I know that can be powerful. I totally understand that can be powerful. Dissociation. It's almost like when you look in the mirror. I used to do this when I was young, and it's almost like, okay, the person thinking my thoughts, I'm like, that's the person staring at me in the mirror. That's the physical body. It can get trippy, but I'm much more clear now, about who I am as a person. I hope Dylan is too. When she awakened that morning, Bethany was next to her in bed. They were both too scared to leave Bethany's room to even go to the bathroom. So it is a dichotomy. Like these girls, part of their minds, I believe they knew something probably bad happened hours earlier. But I think they were trying to distract themselves. Like, okay, let's not call the cops. Let's not go overboard. Maybe it was just a bunch of, I don't know. And then the guy who walked past me, he was wearing something weird. Was that a firefighter or was it a prank? People are always walking through our house. What really is this? Dylan advised at approximately 11:23 a.m. Then she corrected the time to 10:23 a.m. Moscow time. So this is when Dylan is texting Maddie asking her if she was up yet. Now at 11:29 a.m. Moscow time, Dylan texted Kaylee, "Are you up?" She could tell her Snapchats were not being read when she was texting them through Snapchat. So this is when, I guess Bethany and Dylan were telling themselves something was going on. Okay, we don't know what it is. Let's lock ourselves in Bethany's room, lock the door, get some sleep, see where things are in the morning. Maybe Dylan half expected to, start hearing the other roommates start getting up around 10 or 11. And when they still weren't responding, she might have been like, wait a minute, maybe that ruckus was real and horrible last night. So Dylan started reaching out. Dylan advised she called blank, one of her closest friends, about what happened with the masked man. Now, I don't know if this was Josie she's calling or Emily, but they were reaching out. Dylan then explained when she reached out to someone in the text message, which blank told her was at 10:50 a.m., but she thinks blank was mistaken. Blank told her she would send blank to their house because of their concerns about what had occurred during the night. So it's probably Emily. I think it was Emily, Hunter, the other Hunter Johnson, and Josie, I believe, together having breakfast. It's probably Emily telling Dylan, don't worry, I'll send Hunter over there. We'll see what's going on. When blank got to the house, and this is probably Hunter Johnson, when Hunter got to the house, which she described was before noon, probably right before noon, she is not certain if he came in through an unlocked front door or had to use the code to the front door to get into the residence. I think he did have to use the code if memory serves. And when he got into the house, he asked about the location of a knife and she directed him to a knife. So when Hunter gets there, as we understand it from other reports, Dylan and Bethany were already out front with their hands over their mouths. So I guess between the time, Bethany's reaching out for them to come over and help, Dylan and Bethany, in my mind, must have walked out that front door with the wreath on it, realizing, okay, wait a minute, our roommates aren't up, something must be really wrong. Hunter's on his way, and then Hunter's already asking Dylan for a knife. He's already asking Dylan for a knife. At this point, had he seen Xana's body? I don't know if Hunter, I have to look at the other reports. I don't know if Hunter went up the stairs first. It sounds like from his recollection, went up the stairs, saw Xana and was like, oh no, I need a knife. I need to like clear this place. Okay, so Dylan advised she initially went upstairs from Bethany's bedroom with maybe Emily or Bethany, maybe. And she advised when she saw Xana, she realized Xana had not moved when she saw her earlier, since she saw her earlier. She was still thinking at that point, now this is the power of denial, Dylan was still thinking at that point, Xana was still passed out from being drunk. And you know the 911 corroborates this because we hear voices, and I believe it's Dylan, we hear, what's wrong? You know? Is she passed out? In Dylan's mind, she was still trying to tell herself, oh, is Xana still just passed out there in that same location? You know, on that hard floor on her back? Now, this is when Hunter sent Dylan downstairs. You know, Dylan advised blank and blank came over after blank came to the house. So I believe it's like Josie and Emily came over following Hunter because Dylan had asked them to come to the house. She advised Hunter then came downstairs and she could tell by his facial expression he had seen something. And he told them to call 911. So this is when they really knew it was real, finally. Dylan was the one to call 911, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, unless it was Bethany. I have to verify with the other reports. And blank at one point said she was on the phone with police dispatch and the dispatcher was asking her about a defibrillator. So we know we heard that. They told dispatch there were people unconscious. So that was Hunter just saying, oh yeah, you know, someone's passed out. I think he, of course, was trying to protect the girls from any more trauma. Dylan denied seeing Xana or any of the other victims' bodies. So I think that's Dylan they're talking about there. Dylan did see Xana running downstairs, of course, at 4-something a.m. But at that point, she did not know or connect the dots that Xana had expired. So Dylan advised they stayed in the house when the police arrived, and the police, were putting the tape up. And I was like, wow, they stayed inside the house when the police arrived? But I thought everyone was outside. So I have to hear this myself. When they realized there had been a crime and when they saw the ambulance arrive and leave, someone told them they would not leave unless there was no reason to stay. So it's like, wait a minute, the ambulance came, but you know, cops know when people are beyond hope, there's no reason for these ambulance guys, the paramedics, to come in here. Dylan then advised the vandal alert came out, and that is when they realized their friends were actually gone. Dylan advised they all realized there had actually been a murder committed in their residence. Can you imagine? That's when it finally hit them. She said Kaylee had a balcony, and she remembered looking at the pictures in the news, and Kaylee's curtains were all messed up. So that's how she knew that, like, there was a big, fight going on up there. She thought the distance of the balcony to the ground may have been too much and brought too much attention if that is how the suspect made entry into the house through Kaylee's bedroom. So Dylan is rationalizing, like, wait, that would have been too much doing for him to, like, try and climb up to any balcony and get into Kaylee's room that way. I know what Maddie's balcony looked like, but I don't really know in my mind what Kaylee's balcony looked like. I know what Kaylee's bedroom looked like from that TikTok where she's dancing with Murphy by the sliding door or what have you. It's kind of strange. I don't know if the girls, did they switch rooms? I know Kaylee was allegedly all moved out. I don't know. I have to clear this up in my mind. When asked if Dylan checked the house for anyone else when she initially came home for the night with maybe Bethany, and she was asked if she had to unlock the front door, she advised she believed she had to unlock the front door to get into their residence. She advised when she first got home, she remembered the sliding door was closed, but she did not know if it was locked. She advised when she first got home, she went to Kaylee's bedroom to let Murphy out of Kaylee's room. I like that. So Dylan's letting the dog out, relieving Murphy. I'm sure all of them probably took turns just helping take care of Murphy. And Kaylee's lights were on, and no one was in Kaylee's bedroom. Murphy came back into the house after going outside. So it's not like someone was hiding in Kaylee's bedroom, that Dylan could see. because police are still trying to track down who did this. Did someone, enter the home while the girls weren't there and they were just hiding out? And did someone wait for hours to spring their attack on these victims? Sergeant Blaker asked Dylan about the login and username for the router of the Wi-Fi at the residence, and Dylan advised Kaylee was responsible for that bill. She further explained she nor Bethany were responsible for the Wi-Fi bill because they had just moved into the residence in August. So Blank had some follow-up questions for Dylan outside the interview, and as a result, the audio recording was turned off at 2:11 p.m. this same date. So that's it for what might have been the first interview, page 10 out of 10, of Dylan on that day. I think there are going to be several we'll go through, so stick with me. Let's see who's next. Okay, this is a really short 2-pager, so why not get it done? We've gotten 19 pages out of 556 done. This witness is a 21-year-old female. She was 21 at the time of this interview. Hispanic, Mexican, Latin. It sounds like she doesn't have a ton of information, but they interviewed her nonetheless November 18th, 2022 at about 12:42 p.m. at the ISP District 3 office in Meridian, regarding the homicides, of course. Oh, audio video. I'm just now seeing this audio visual, so this is pretty cool. Hopefully everyone has been recorded audibly and visually so we can request the videos. So in essence, November 18th, again, 12:42, this is what this woman said. This 21-year-old told police, Idaho State Police. She lived at blank King Road across the street from 1122 King Road House. One of the people across the street was a former sorority sister. One was a classmate, and the other two were people she knew through mutual friends. So she knew Maddie and Kaylee the best. Her boyfriend was best friends with Maddie's boyfriend. So we know Maddie's boyfriend was Jake. Whomever this person is, her boyfriend was best friends with Jake. So they hung out a lot. This was a current relationship. Maddie was in a class with her. Kaylee was a sorority sister. This girl knew Xana and Ethan in passing. She's lived at King Road for just the semester. She's currently a senior in school. She was back then, of course. She lived in the sorority house for 3 years. This is the first year outside of the sorority. She has been inside that 1122 King Road house multiple times, with the last time being in September. They came over to her house more often. So she had only been in that 1122 King Road, well, multiple times it says, but the most recent time at that point was in September. So she's saying they, I'm assuming she means all the residents of 1122 King Road, came over to her house on King Road more often. Okay, so this girl knew Maddie and Kaylee for 3 years, and they met through recruitment. So sorority sisters. She saw Maddie and Kaylee Saturday night, November 12th. They went to the corner club after the game. So, of course, they were narrowing down people who had last seen all these victims. So Maddie and Kaylee were already there when she arrived. She was there for a couple of hours and was really drunk. She left before Maddie and Kaylee. It was sometime around midnight. Kaylee had jokingly mentioned she thought she had a stalker at Winco. It had happened once and was an unknown person. She heard from another friend in an instance of the house door at 1122 King Road being open after all the roommates returned from a weekend trip. Wow, so is that the same time? Remember previously, and I know, it's a game of telephone, everyone picks up different details from stories, so certain people might get it wrong. But remember, the other report said, the girls had just gone to Starbucks. The girls had just gone to Starbucks and come back, and their door was open. This is saying their door was open after a weekend trip. So all of the roommates had gone on some weekend trip. We don't know when this was. That's scary, because imagine if Brian, if he had been watching any of their social media, if he knew, for example, all the roommates, no one's at 1122 King Road. If he knew, for example, they had gone on some trip to wherever, Lake Tahoe, I'm making that up. And then he's like, Did he use that opportunity ever to enter the house and leave the front door wide open and freak them out and start the washer? That's what I'm wondering. Okay, this girl has a basement room and she can see the 1122 King Road house from it. She woke up at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. She didn't hear or see anything that night. 1122 King Road did not have a party on Saturday night. They may have had one on Friday, but it wasn't crazy. So now, see, I'm trying to get things straight in my mind because according to Dateline, I still remember this. Friday night, that would have been November 11th, 2022, Dateline reported they had a party that could have had as many as 150 people in attendance. But now this girl across the street is saying, look, they might have had a party on Friday, but it wasn't like one of those big crazy ones. It wasn't like, I think, people spilling out into the parking lot. I don't think the cops got called Friday night. It wasn't any big rager. Well, Maddie and Jake were a solid couple and had dated for a year. Blank was with her boyfriend in Boise that weekend. So the interview concluded at 12:52. It was good. She was able to give them information about what she knew about the girls, but she was away. Doesn't sound like she knew them a while, but it didn't sound like she had a ton of information to offer. So that's her interview. All right, we've got another pretty short interview here. So apparently this took place maybe November 18th. I still don't know what this from date represents versus the reported date. So many dates. This is Detective David Cortez. This is a person, a male, who doesn't know a whole bunch about the victim. So we'll see. Here it is, November 18th, ISP. Investigators Sergeant Dave Cortez and Detective Chris Pahanka interviewed this man regarding the homicides. The interview took place at, his residence located at Buell, Idaho. So I always look for the witness information. He's a white male, born in 2000. He was 22 years old. So many of these are audio-visual, and it's weird. It's funny how it's on CD or DVD. So, when those cops send you the DVD, I literally had to buy a DVD player or, to connect to my MacBook for the Barry Morphew case, because that's how police out there in Colorado provided those body cam videos. So let's see. On November 18th, they conducted this interview at 11:55 a.m. So this guy relayed to police the following. He's roommates with someone. So I don't know who he's roommates with, but he has known Kaylee since freshman year. They were in the same pledge class, so they've hung out together periodically over the last 4 years. He has visited her house in Coeur d'Alene once. So this is probably a good friend of Kaylee's. They've hung out. Maybe they know each other a little bit more than what I initially assumed. This is only a 3-page interview. We're almost on the 3rd page. So over the past 4 years, this guy came to Kaylee's house once. So he knew Xana as well, but not as well as Kaylee. He also knew Maddie as well, but they didn't hang out a lot. So it sounds like he knew Kaylee the best. Kaylee and Blank, so we know they're talking about Jack DeCoeur. Kaylee and Jack DeCoeur had been dating since high school. They're on and off and have broken up twice. They had recently broken up because she accepted a job in Dallas, so they were settling things before she left after the semester. They broke up about 2 months ago. So it's like childhood sweethearts, and then they're trying to kind of find their own way. He never heard from Kaylee about anyone stalking her or giving her bad vibes. So he didn't hear about that directly from Kaylee, but he had heard there was someone following her out of Wenco a couple of months ago. He heard from friends she had someone follow her out of the Wenco to her car. He heard that story from a sorority sister of Kaylee's. I guess whoever that is in California right now, and he turned over her phone number, so I'm sure the investigator wanted to talk to that sorority sister. Now, this guy works at Blank in Moscow, so he saw Kaylee, Maddie, and blank leave Blank together that night. This was the last time he saw them. So he saw Kaylee, Maddie, and someone else leaving. I don't know. It couldn't have been the corner club because they would have just said corner club. I don't know where he saw them leave. They said they were going to John's Alley, so that's another person confirming, just like Hoodie Guy confirmed. Kaylee and Maddie were planning to go to John's Alley, and we're trying to get some friends to go with them. Oh, how sad. They didn't end up going there, though. He didn't know where they were before they showed up at blank, whatever that is. I wonder what time the John's Alley closed. I keep thinking, oh, if they had only gone there and, maybe stayed out even later as much as they could, maybe they could have, I don't know, not met the fate they met. This man had seen Xana at some parties, but didn't really know her very personally. He tried to recruit Ethan into his frat, but otherwise really didn't know him. He doesn't know of anyone who might have wanted to hurt any of them. They were all really nice people. This part is sweet. He's basically saying Jack wouldn't have harmed Kaylee. He loves her and thought they would be married. They have a great relationship even when they were not together. He is a calm and kind person. He's into sports, not an outdoorsman. He doesn't have a knife. He has never heard Jack even say anything bad about Kaylee. There is an apartment complex behind the victim's house that has a lot of, quote, sketchy people in it. There are registered offenders living in it. That place is behind blank blank apartments. There are windows facing the girl's house, and it's adjacent to it. It's a brown brick apartment complex. We concluded the interview. So that's how short this interview was. We know those brown brick apartments right next to the house, and yeah, if someone maybe is on those end caps, kind of like apartments, and especially above the White House, maybe some people in there may have been staring at the girls. But of course, I believe Brian Koberger is the one who did this. He entered his guilty plea, and it's sad already some people are using, these documents as ammunition to try and sow so much division and so much, oh, it couldn't have been Brian. What about this guy? What about that guy they never followed up with? Okay, let's move on to the next interview. Alrighty, we've got another short but interesting one here. Now this is an interview with a 21-year-old white female. She has an interesting little outlook on Kaylee's brother-sister type relationship with her ex-boyfriend. So she was interviewed November 18th, 2022 at about 12:28 p.m. Idaho State Police Detective Sergeant David Cortez and Detective Chris Pohanka interviewed this woman. The interview took place in Buell, Twins Fall County, Idaho. I called and arranged with blank to come speak with her about the homicide in Moscow. I asked her how she knew the victims in Moscow, and this woman explained how Kaylee belonged to a certain sorority. Even though Kaylee resigned from the sorority, blank and blank still remained friends. So her and Kaylee still remained friends, after they were sorority sisters for so long. Maddie, of course, was one of Kaylee's best friends. Maddie was in classes with blank friend, and there's some kind of quotation. The girls would work on group projects at sorority. Blank knew Xana through mutual friends and knew Ethan the same way. So this girl is still in the sorority, or she was back then, but she does not live in the sorority house. She lives in a house which overlooks the backyard of Kaylee. Interesting. She described how her room looked directly to the sliding door of Kaylee's house. They asked her if she was around the victims the night of the homicide. She was with her friends blank and blank, and they began their night at this John's Alley place that keeps being brought up, 114 East 6th Street, Moscow. She took a phone call from Kaylee to come down to the corner club. That's at 202 North Main Street in Moscow. Okay, so I guess this woman and her friends went to the corner club, and then friends slowly left from there, and they went back to their houses. Kaylee and Maddie were still at the club with someone, and Kaylee and blank were planning on going to John's Alley to continue the evening. This woman was talking to another friend and noticed that Kaylee and Maddie had left. So I think they were kind of all over the place with their plans, like, oh, let's go here or there, and then, people doing their own thing. Someone went to the grub truck, Grub Wandering Kitchen, no set location, Moscow area, and believed she was about a half an hour behind Maddie and Kaylee at the truck. This woman even had the same Lyft driver as Maddie and Kaylee, so she had made it to the grub truck just half an hour later. Sergeant Cortez asked if she had any further contact with the girls, and she didn't. Blank and blank fell asleep in the blank room. She went to blank room for the night. She thought she remembered hearing music but was not sure, so her ear witness or eyewitness testimony is important since she lived so close to the 1122 King Road house and she could, see the sliding glass door. She said she would have been able to hear if they were having a party. Okay, so blank got a video from her friend of blank on her bed snoring. Someone tried to listen to the video to see if she could hear anything in the background and she couldn't. So I don't know when that video happened or who was snoring, but I'm assuming it has to do with something. Maybe it has to do with her taking a video at her house during the time, critical times. And so someone took a video of her maybe snoring, and since she lives so close to the 1122 King Road house, of course, it's like, let's see if we can find anything, hear anything, see anything. Sergeant Cortez asked if she was aware where they were before the Corner Club. This woman thought they might have come from their house. Thursday night, Kaylee wanted them to go out. Saturday night, everyone was out. She said the girls usually like getting ready together. That makes sense. Sergeant Cortez asked if she was aware where they were Friday, and she remembered there was a game. She thought a couple of them went to the game but was not sure. A couple of them went out later. Yeah, so was the game Friday night or Saturday night? Maybe there were a couple of games. I don't know. Sergeant Cortez asked if she knew where they were Friday, and blank knew Thursday night was a sleepover at the blank house, wherever that is. Kaylee was not able to attend. She resigned from the sorority. Okay, so Kaylee can't go over there and sleep, I guess, at the sorority house. She thought Kaylee was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and she told her to come back. She thought Kaylee came back Friday and showed people her car. She did not believe they did anything Friday night. Kaylee did come back in town and show people her car, and you don't want any of Kaylee's friends feeling any guilt, for encouraging her to drive. Like, come on, show us your car. No one knew evil was lurking. Sergeant Cortez asked if Kaylee ever mentioned anything about a stalker. So this woman described Kaylee as a person who would just joke things off. She believed there could have been a time where she mentioned something. When recruitment for the sorority was over, Kaylee went back over to blank house, whoever that is. They were talking and catching up. She thought she mentioned something, but Kaylee pushed it off as a joke. She could not remember anything specific from the conversation since it didn't seem like a big deal. This woman believed if Kaylee would tell anyone about something strange like a stalker, would be her ex-boyfriend, blank, or Maddie. So if Kaylee's going to tell anyone, strange, like, oh, something's going on, Kaylee would be telling that information to Jack or someone else or to Maddie. She's talking about Jack and Kaylee grew up together, and they shared a dog, Murphy, together. Sergeant Cortez asked this woman if Kaylee said anything once her and Jack broke up, if he would want to hurt her. Kaylee described Jack to her as her child, and he was not a serious guy. So Kaylee is looking at Jack as, oh, that's my child, like he's a boy. Blank was in blank fraternity, and they all hung out together since they lived next door. She described Kaylee and blank as a brother and sister relationship. So yeah, they're talking about Jack again. They shared Murphy the dog. Sergeant Cortez asked her if she thought Jack would do anything to hurt her, and she believed he would never do anything to hurt her. Jack was described as a city guy, and she did not think he did a lot outdoors. He was from the Coeur d'Alene area and grew up with sisters. So yeah, Jack, I guess, knows how to treat a woman. He grew up with sisters. This is the second person saying Jack was not like an outdoorsy guy. He might have been athletic, but not outdoorsy. Sergeant Cortez asked this woman if she knew anyone that might have wanted to hurt them in their circle of friends, and she said their circle is interesting. And that's where it kind of stumps everyone, because this group of people would probably never have been friends if it wasn't for the housing situation. All of the roommates' friends would meet each other and have friends hang out with friends. So I don't know if she meant the housing situation with so many people living in the 1122 King Road house, and then, their extended friends, and everyone got to know each other that way. It was just an interesting way for people to meet, maybe who would never have met before. 14. Sergeant Cortez asked if there was any mention of strangers around the house. So this woman spoke about one of the prior tenants to the house. The house has a weird feeling to it. However, it was from several months ago. I wonder what that means. Yeah, maybe that house did have a strange feeling to it. But I don't know what prior tenants. This is why I really like to get the whole interview, because this interview, for example, started at what time? 12:28, and it ended at 12:55. So nearly half an hour, and maybe, there's more detail in the specific way this woman may have said, the house has a weird feeling to it. Maybe she said it, maybe she described a little bit more, and maybe went into more detail than what this narrative provides. So we'll see. Sergeant Cortez asked her if she heard anything the night of the homicide, and she normally would. They were referred to as the party house and would normally hang out in the backyard and play loud music. The night of the homicide, everyone had gone elsewhere to hang out. The sliding back door was considered the front door to people who would visit. So people knew to go in that sliding glass door. They knew that was generally the point of entry. I guess especially people who wouldn't have the code to the front door. She didn't know if the back door was locked or unlocked. She talked about how the kitchen area, living area, was the main place for them to hang out. The door was usually open for people. She did not know of any large knives in the house. Sergeant Cortez asked her if Kaylee had told her about someone following her at the Winco. She had not heard anything of the story. Sergeant Cortez asked this woman if she knew anyone or knew of anyone we should talk to, and she was having a hard time recalling anything. She talked about how Kaylee and her would go out randomly and could not think of anyone to talk to. Sergeant Cortez asked her if she knew anyone Kaylee was romantically involved with after blank, after Jack, I guess, named blank, and a blank who are both blank. She did not have any contact information. She did not believe any of the males mentioned would have anything to do with the homicide. I told her if she can think of anything to assist the investigation to call. She mentioned how she would hear the dog Murphy bark, and she never heard him bark that night. Blank had the television on and thought she had gone to bed around 3:30 a.m. She would be able to hear anything going on in the house since the windows are really thin, I believe they mean. She could even hear conversations in the backyard. So this woman has a great vantage point, or had, she could be a good ear witness, but since she went to bed at 3:30, she had the TV on. So maybe that muffled some sounds, couched sounds for her. Sergeant Cortez asked if the other roommates would have anyone who would want to hurt them. She thought everyone in the house were amazing people. So that's pretty consistent. A lot of people are like, no, I don't know anyone who would want to hurt these victims. Kaylee's boyfriend Jack was in Boise. She spoke very highly of him. Xana and Ethan were in a newer relationship and usually partied with the blank. Maybe people Xana knew, a lot of people, and did not have any enemies. Blank and her friends created Instagram accounts and have their profiles private. Lately, they have been getting a lot of traffic. She added people can make a fake profile and it would be an easy way to stalk people. She mentioned a profile which had a pretty girl as the profile picture. The profile had been around for a long time. The name on the profile was blank. She did not know if the profile was real or fake. At approximately 12:55 p.m., we concluded the interview. For further information, see audio. That is what I want to do. Some of these would be better, maybe they would make more sense if we just heard the context. Like when she starts talking about fake Instagram profiles with this pretty girl's picture, apropos of what? We want to know what. So that's it for her interview. Okay, we've got another interview with someone who lived really close to the victims. So this is a 21-year-old white female who was interviewed on November 18th by ISP detectives, of course, regarding the homicides. The interview took place in the District 3 office in Meridian, Idaho. Now this just says flash drive with blank interview audio. So some people were not video recorded, it sounds like. Sounds like just audibly recorded, some people. So during this interview, this woman stated she lived at blank in Moscow during the incident. Now her backyard abutted the 1122 King Road backyard. So that's an important place to be in terms of eyewitness, ear witness. She knew Maddie, Kaylee, Xana. She didn't know Ethan, but she was closest with Maddie and Kaylee. She was in the sorority with Kaylee. The rest of that house was in a different sorority. Kaylee had dropped the sorority house membership that year due to financial cost. So Kaylee was out of town most of the week, but had decided to come back near the end of the week to go to the Pi Formal Friday, November 11th with one of her roommates. So indeed, like how I believed that Kaylee was Dylan's date, I think that's correct. So Friday night, Kaylee had asked her to go to the club, but she did not. She did go out Saturday to a game day celebration, so Saturday was the game, at about 2 to 2:30 p.m. at the Big Blank apartment. She left and went to the game at approximately 4:40 p.m. while Kaylee and Maddie stayed at the party. So Saturday night, this woman went to the Dirty Goat, a local bar. Kaylee contacted her and wanted her to go to the Corner Club. She met Kaylee at the Corner Club at around 11. I'm so glad these people got to see Kaylee. So Kaylee was, I guess, in town calling her friends. She's like, I'm at the Corner Club, come see me. Kaylee, Maddie, and a lot of other people were there. Now this is the one who says, okay, some kind of run-in. She had a small run-in with blank at the Corner Club. I'm assuming it's this guy who got kicked out of the bar around the same time or not too long before Maddie and Kaylee left the Corner Club. So there is talk about this in the book with some guy. I don't know if he was being inappropriate. It sounds similar to that interview with the other guy who was like really drunk and he didn't know why he got kicked out, or he didn't even know he got kicked out. Maybe he was blacking out. I don't know. Supposedly Maddie had a run-in with someone. So anyway, this woman stayed at the Corner Club until approximately 2 a.m. and arrived home at approximately 2:30 a.m. She was up until approximately 3:30 a.m. and did not hear anything. She woke up Sunday morning at approximately 7:30 a.m. She had been in a different room than her own. She and roommates made breakfast around 8:30 a.m. Later, when she went to her room, she could see a lot of police cars next door. So she must not have gone to her room until around noon or something. She spoke with the Uber driver who told her he was pretty sure he had taken Maddie and Kaylee home that night. He drove a smaller gray sedan. Kaylee's old room was the room Xana was living in. That's what I was trying to remember. So, okay, Kaylee's old room. Kaylee must have been on the second floor, but that's the room Xana was living in. Kaylee recently moved into the room on the third floor after blank said she was not moving back in. So some other girl left. Can you imagine how she feels? Like, oh, I'm so grateful I wasn't there. Kaylee did not seem at all worried about a stalker or any other dangers. She thought Kaylee would have said something if there was a real stalker. Kaylee would have been scared if she had a stalker. Instead, Kaylee was planning events for them all the time. Well, I always think just because Kaylee, she probably noticed weird things going on. She followed true crime. I'm sure she kept her head on a swivel, and she noticed, it seems from all these reports, weird things happening, someone out in the tree line, hearing noises the time they went inside the house, and Kaylee might have been aware of a stalker or just guys trying to approach her, trying to, flirt with her or whatever. And even if she related to her friends in a joking manner, that doesn't mean she wasn't necessarily fearful. But I see she wouldn't let it stop her from living, Okay, back to the report. Her bedroom window, this woman's bedroom window, looks out onto 1122 King Road's backyard. She can usually hear anything going on in their backyard. Murphy, the dog at 1122 King Road, usually barks a little bit, and she can generally hear it, which she didn't recall happening that night. So some people heard Murphy's bark, some people didn't. By then, some people were probably deep asleep. So she had booked tickets with Kaylee to go to Europe together. Oh, how sad. approximately 3 weeks prior to the homicides. Oh, how horrible. Kaylee had recently sold a white Subaru sedan for approximately $6,300 to a man using Facebook Marketplace. Kaylee had just purchased the Range Rover the previous day. Wow. Kaylee was making good money, but a Range Rover seemed expensive. Kaylee was recently offering to buy drinks for friends quite often. So I think there's an inference here that people are kind of like, this happened when the crimes first happened. People were questioning, how can Kaylee afford that Range Rover? Why, and now it's kind of like, why is she buying people drinks and stuff? But I don't know if Kaylee had gotten like a sign-on bonus for this, job in Texas, or, with her selling that white sedan Subaru, which I didn't realize, for $6,300. I don't know how much she put down on the Range Rover, or what kind of deal she might have gotten. As I understand it from other reports, Kaylee had already started working from home or whatever, I believe for this company she was going to move to Texas for. So she might have already started making good money. If she had, excellent credit also, she might have gotten a great deal on the Range Rover. I don't even think it was a new Range Rover. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was used. Who knows? Maybe she got a great deal. Maybe she was just leaving college and wanted to, buy drinks for her friends, show off her car, and just go start her new life. And it's so sad that this woman had booked tickets with Kaylee to go to Europe together. But Kaylee had an ex-boyfriend, Jack, we know, who is a neighbor. Kaylee and Jack dated for approximately 6 years. Kaylee and Jack dated all summer while Kaylee was up in Moscow working. Kaylee and Jack were not together, but were good friends. I hope I'm getting all these redactions correct. I don't want to make any assumptions where it could be a different name in there. But Kaylee and Jack shared a dog, Murphy, together. Maddie had a boyfriend, Jake, in Boise, who was friends with a lot of friends who had graduated. Kaylee stayed in her old room while she was living in Moscow all summer. Kaylee only had one roommate during the summer, some person. So Kaylee was there all summer. I guess she was working from maybe the 1122 King Road house that summer. Kaylee worked for blank and ended up getting a full-time offer starting February 2023. She does not think Kaylee went out much during the summer. So Kaylee was probably just grinding. She was just there in the house with someone else who lived there and working. Blank had just graduated and stayed in Moscow for the summer. Whomever that other person was who had just graduated and perhaps lived there in the house with Kaylee that summer they're talking about. So this woman did not think blank had anything to do with the incident. Okay, so this woman showed a video from a party earlier on game day which showed what blank was wearing, which appeared to be the same as a person from a video from the grub truck. I believe they're talking about the grub truck guy and thinking, oh, he didn't have anything to do with the crime. But here's what he was wearing, the hoodie guy. So this woman remembers Kaylee and Maddie saying they were going to John's Alley, so another person remembers it, and blank was going to go with them, like hoodie guy. Now, blank was not good friends with Kaylee and Maddie, but Maddie is kind of friends with a lot of the people involved with the Greek houses. Blank is in the same pledge class year as Kaylee and Maddie and has been in a lot of their classes. So now this woman showed a screenshot of a group message obtained by someone. The author of the message seemed to know a lot of information regarding the homicide, so I wonder what they knew, what the leaks were. I want to hear this. And she also had read some really creepy comments on YouTube and obtained screenshots of some of them, so she turned over a flash drive with some of the comments. She did not believe there was a party at 1122 King Road on Saturday, game day. People often use that sliding glass door as the main entrance for the house. She does not think it was usually locked. That's so scary, just knowing what we know now and how that house it stuck out like a sore thumb, and just the way it was built, and it was white, and it was like so many surrounding places could look down on it, see into it, all the lights on. Knowing the sliding glass door was kind of like almost a free-for-all, But Kaylee and Maddie did not use drugs. She didn't know Xana well enough to comment on her. The neighbors' dogs behind them also did not bark at anything that night. So we know some dog barked We heard it on the video. Obviously, this woman didn't hear it. The interview ended at approximately 11:53 a.m. For complete details, review audio recording of the interview. The audio recording was copied onto a flash drive and submitted into evidence under this tag number. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is a November 18th, 2022 interview at around 11:36 a.m. This man, he's a 22-year-old white male. He lives across the street, or used to, from the 1122 King Road house. But this interview took place at, I'm assuming, his home, located in Parma, Canyon County, Idaho. So you can tell just within a few days, 5 days after this horror, we can tell how many kids, I call them kids, were just so frightened and they just wanted to go home. So they probably all went to other cities, went home to their parents. The crime just terrorized people. So he has something interesting to say about Kaylee dating someone. He doesn't know a lot, I think. This is only, we're already on page 2 of 3. But I like reading through each of them. I want to get the interesting little snippets that one person might say that another person might not have. So on November 18th, 2022, around 11:36, Homeland Security Investigations Task Force Officer. I wonder why they brought in Homeland Security here. So Sage Collins and this is Idaho State Detective Matt Wernsing, interviewed this guy in regard to the homicides. And it took place in Parma. And basically he's saying he was a friend of Kaylee's and Maddie's. He was also their neighbor across the street at King Road in Moscow. He did not know the other two victims. Kaylee was in an on and off dating relationship with one of blank roommates. So maybe he's talking about Jack. I might have gotten that wrong. I thought perhaps he was speaking of someone else. It's hard to tell. Blank and blank were in the same fraternity. He also knew Maddie's boyfriend, but he had graduated and was living in Boise. So yeah, Jake was way up in Boise. He had already graduated. He knew Kaylee a little more than Maddie because she had dated blank, and he said their relationship remained amicable. So he is talking about Jack here. Blank and his girlfriend were at his house on Saturday, November 12th. Blank went to the victim's house around 10 p.m. At approximately 10:45 p.m., Blank, Kaylee, and Maddie got a ride to the Corner Club bar located on Main Street. He believed they got a ride from an Uber driver named so-and-so. He and his friends went to the Corner Club shortly after the girls left. After approximately an hour, he spoke with, I'm assuming he did, or I don't know if he means his girlfriend. Someone spoke with Kaylee and Maddie briefly while at the Corner Club before they left. Blank told Blank the two girls were going to John's Alley Tavern on 6th Street. I guess he saw they were hanging out with another student he identified as maybe Hoodie Guy, and saw them leave the Corner Club with Hoodie Guy, and told Blank the two girls did not typically hang out with Blank and thought it was odd, probably Hoodie Guy. Blank and Blank walked to Blank house at approximately 1:30 a.m. and stayed there. They woke up the next morning, Sunday, November 13th, went and got breakfast, and Blank drove Blank to his house at approximately 11:45 a.m. There was only one police vehicle in front of the residence when they drove by. It was probably a little later than 11:45, So Blank went outside with Blank and another roommate and watched more law enforcement respond to the scene. Blank ran to the victim's house and was there for approximately an hour and a half before returning. Maybe this is this guy's girlfriend. Was visibly upset and told Blank and Blank some of the girls had died, and Kaylee was one of them. So I'm assuming he left Moscow later on Sunday. Blank clarified he and Blank went to the grub truck on their way from the Corner Club to Blank's house. He also saw on social media that Kaylee and Maddie went to the grub truck after he and Blank were there. He thought they may have been at the grub truck between 3:30 a.m. based on when they posted to their social media. The grub truck broadcasted a live feed that captured the two girls at the truck. So this guy thought it was odd, maybe that Hoodie Guy spent so much time around the two girls. Blank had heard Blank may have committed the murder, so maybe he was blaming Hoodie Guy, but said Blank went home with their other roommates and so when he and so left the corner club. There's a fourth roommate who worked somewhere but would have gone home around 4 a.m. after closing down, wherever placed. There were also 2 more students that lived above Blank and Blank that were hanging out with Blank and before they all went to bed. So there's a lot of redactions, makes it so difficult, but some you can get. Blank told Blank he had been woken up between 4 and 4:45 a.m. because Blank and Kaylee's dog had been barking very loudly and uncontrollably. So if this is on Sunday when he heard the dog, Murphy, here it is. It sounded as though the dog was outside, which was odd because of how cold it was and the dog not being an outside dog. So I don't know why so many people thought they heard Murphy outside. I'm like, the room Murphy was in, was a window open, or was Murphy ever outside? That part I'm still not clear on. Okay, this guy did not know the 2 roommates that were not injured and found it odd that they were sitting in their rooms and slept through the incident. He was not aware of any of the victims had a stalker. He mentioned a stalker from earlier in the year that lived in Blank apartments that had already been reported to the police. So there was already some kind of stalker had been reported to the police. This interview was concluded at 12:09 p.m. For further details from his statement, see the notes, listen to the audio recording. So they put all this stuff on CDs and submitted it into ISP evidence, maybe because they were really worried about things getting leaked. So his interview went from 11:36 to about 12:09, again about half an hour, not too long. So let's go to the next interview. The things in this interview kind of sound familiar if you've read the book, watched the documentary. This is a 21-year-old female who has some insight into why the guy would have gotten kicked out of the corner club that night. November 18th, she was interviewed 2022, 12:16 p.m., Homeland Security, Sage Collins, ISP Detective Matt Worsing interviewed her regarding the homicides, and the interview took place at her boyfriend's home located in Canyon County, Idaho. Part of me believes this could be Emily. Maybe not. That looks a little short to be Emily, but we have heard some of this stuff before. It's really basically only like a page long because we've already been through the first page. Most of the information is on page 2. This interview talks about, it's a summary of her statement. So she knows a little bit here, this 21-year-old female. On Saturday, November 12th, 2022, she was at Blank College House, located at King Road in Moscow. She called Kaylee at approximately 10 p.m. She went over to her house. Maddie came home from the Blank house shortly after. So Kaylee had contacted a man by the name of whatever to give them a ride from their house. She did not know his last name, but provided his phone number as whatever. Okay, when he arrived to pick them up, Kaylee got in the front seat, and Blank and Maddie got in the back seat. He had recently had a baby, and Blank asked him how fatherhood was. So he said he was feeling down about it and let out a big sigh. So he said it was harder than he'd expected and had been kind of hard on him. He also said his wife and kid were out of town and he was excited to have the house to himself for the weekend. Interesting. He dropped the girls off at the corner club and told them he would be driving until about 3 a.m. So all these redactions of all these friends' names were friends of the girls. They were already at the bar, and Blank told Blank he would also go to the corner club. Blank and Blank shared a class with a guy named whatever who was also at the corner club. I guess he began creeping maybe Maddie out. I heard it might be Maddie. He was staring at her, making comments to her. Someone also spoke to someone saying he needed to get her GD phone number right now and was being kind of aggressive. But someone hung around the girls at the bar for a while. So I'm assuming this woman said, Kaylee and Maddie left to go to John's Alley in Moscow and heard blank, I guess Hoodie Guy went with them. She didn't see him leave with the girls, but thought it would be weird if it was true. The girls had apparently asked maybe Hoodie Guy to go with them as well, but he stayed at the corner club. Maybe they asked, not Hoodie Guy because he did go with them, but maybe they asked Jake, not Jake, sorry, maybe they asked Jack Decor. Remember how we saw that surveillance footage photo? It looked definitely as if Kaylee was talking to her ex-boyfriend Jack. Like, I think she was realizing she wanted to be back with him. So I think they might be talking about, Jack, come on with us to this other place. What is it, John's? Yeah, come on with us maybe to this John's Alley, but maybe Jack didn't want to go. He stayed at the corner club. So-and-so left the corner club with blank at approximately 1:15 a.m. and went to the grub truck. They got food at the grub truck and went to blank house at blank in Moscow to eat and go to bed. I asked her why it would have been odd for the girls to leave with blank, with Hoodie Guy, I guess. She said, I guess he was not someone she or the other girls hung out with because he was weird. He smoked a lot of pot, had a temper, and fought a lot. The girls knew blank because he was a blank or member of the frat. Maddie's boyfriend was also a whatever, and the sororities would often hang out with the blank sorority guys. So Kaylee and Maddie had sent videos of themselves at the grub truck to a Snapchat group around 2 a.m. Wow, so I guess they were taking videos. I don't know if I saw them. I think maybe I saw them taking videos, and I don't know if we've seen those. Blank had not heard of Kaylee having a stalker. She said the victims were pretty well liked and did not know any of the issues the victims had with anyone. She thought blank may have been working at the blank the night of the incident, as well as, so many redactions. She said there were a lot of Instagram accounts that were surfacing. I know, it's so annoying. This is the part I heard before. The accounts had few followers, but were following many of the girls and making comments such as, "You're next. Thank God they're gone. And I'm going to do it again." Who would do that? She thought blank involvement with the sorority girls was odd. He would frequently drop other rides for them and gave them his personal phone number. He seemed to pay particular attention to blank members, like some sorority girls, specific sorority girls, members, sorority members. This started with 2 sorority girls that had already graduated and had passed blank's phone number on to them. So this interview was concluded at 1:03. Complete details, we can review the audio. So let's see how long when it started, 12:16. So again, almost an hour. I believe what I might end up doing is ending here, even though we're only on page 36. Obviously, it takes a long time to read through these documents and give commentary. My entire hope is to literally read through all of them. I know that would take a very long time. I don't necessarily just want to cherry pick certain interviews. I kind of want to read through all of them. And if I'm doing it, I might as well read it aloud to you. So there's so much to read through. Obviously, it's going to take tons of time, but my plan is to go through all of them. But with 556 pages, oh my goodness, it will end up being a lot to read through. But that's still my plan, because I like to see the actual words for myself, and I definitely want to hear the actual audio for myself from what these people actually had to say. Isn't it weird? Someone else is saying she always had an uneasy, weird feeling at the house, which is one of the reasons she didn't want to go back. Yeah, it was a house that was easy to get into and easy to watch. They didn't have any blinds over the windows, and I guess due to the layout of the house. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves because, I'm not there yet. That's some other witness. But I was able to kind of scroll through, of course, with so many pages, but I really want to just really go through and dig into all of them. So for now, as of today, that's my plan. But obviously I would have to do this in parts because I want to get through all of Dylan's interviews. I want to hear Jack's interview. I want to hear Jake's interview. I want to get audio and video. I want to see what these people had to say. Everyone could have something unique and interesting to offer. And of course, some people would know a lot more than other people. So I really want to know who knows more than others. And I really want to get into, I don't know if Na-Young Ko's interview is in here. I really want to look for that one, because I've already seen snippets of, weird things. People are like, oh, someone was going in a girl's, lingerie drawer and moving her stuff around her. There's so much we have to go through. So perhaps even if it takes me the entire month of August or more, let's hope we can really get into, some of this stuff. I don't have to, of course, read every line, but I am really fascinated in the interviews, what people who literally knew the victims have to say. So let's stop here for now. We were on page 36, and maybe I'll be able to get through them maybe a little bit quicker in future videos, so they won't be so long. But for now, let's just end it here. Thank you so much for watching all of this, and take care. We'll see how much we can get through, because this is a lot of data. Thanks for watching.